Why is my face shocked? So often that happens, we switch over to find that we're stuck on an expression. That's so funny. Welcome, everyone. I'm glad you like the music, Faybot. I wanted to try something a little different. I wanted to still keep with the relaxing background music, but maybe a little more sinister. So I thought organ music would be perfect. We used to listen to this exact, I guess it's called a playlist, even though it's one video, 6.5 hour long video. We used to listen to this many years ago. I guess it wasn't that many years ago, but when we first got into poppin' music because of the character Ziz, that was a huge comfort to us. Fancily creepy. Also, to answer your question, Alex, we have had both a PS3 and PSP. I said that like we don't have them anymore, but we do. I think we have the fat PS3, and then for PSP we had, I think it's called the 1000 series, and then we eventually got the 3000 version. Hello! Did you know the PS3 is backwards compatible with PS1 and PS2 games? I have heard that. We haven't tried it out, but I have heard that. It's hard. I don't know why, but we keep forgetting that it is. I guess we play most PS1 and PS2 games via emulator these days. But it is fun to play them on the physical console too. Okay, so I'm sorry for starting a bit late. A big reason it took a little time to prepare. It's because I was loading the scans into Streamlabs that we took, and I wanted to go over them before I continue. Show you all these wonderful images. So this one is, I think it's kind of strange. You see this image, like it's like right when you start, like before you start actually reading anything, it's right there. And this is kind of a spoiler, so I don't know why it's here and not like at the point of the book where it happens. You can see, I'm sure everyone understands there's going to be spoilers in this stream because we are reading the second half of the book. We already read the first half of the book 3 weeks ago. But this is Tama, Meadow, Unile, and Swim, bending over a ruler's dead body. Saying it's a spoiler is a spoiler. That's probably true. But actually, we are going to have to be spoiled a bit doing these streams to load up these images. But I do think that the images are vague enough where you can't really tell what's going on until you read the story. Yes. Okay, our headmates want to voice this page. At their feet lay the unmoving form of a former magical girl. The nasty girl is gone. Miss, I'm better than you! Okay. And then this is a portrait of, I'm blanking. Ripple. Why did I forget her name? I'm so sorry, Ripple. Wait, I should see where we're actually at to see what the next image will be. Or what the last image was. Okay, I got it. Here's a portrait of Snow White and La Pucelle. Now, of course, normally I'm just going to show them as I get to them, but I'm halfway into the book, so I'm just catching you up on the images that we've seen. Here is Sister Nana Vice Winter Prison, and Top Speed. I think this is when Top Speed was introducing Ripple to them and hoping they would get along, and it didn't go over so well. Here's Ruler with her loyal subjects. Swim, Tama, Meadow, and Unile. Or I guess Unile and Meadow. I don't know why. I always assume Meadow will be on the left. I think she usually is on the left. And here, of course, is Hardcore Alice, who our headmate Hollow is a big kin of. And that will catch you up on the images. And now I'm just going to go over the cast really quick again. It almost feels silly to introduce headmates as a cast, but I mean, we are different people. So we have Cuddle voicing Snow White, La Pucelle, rest in peace, and Sister Nana. We have Magma voicing Ripple, and oh, I forgot Cuddle also is voicing Calamity Mary. We have Magma voicing Ripple and Vice Winter Prison. We have Hollow voicing Swim and Hardcore Alice. We have myself as the narrator and I almost said Calamity Mary. Musician of the Forest Cranberry. We have, of course, Ruler, our fictive Ruler, as Ruler. Or maybe I should introduce her as Magenta, because that's the name of the character that will be eventually streaming one day. I think the music got a little quiet all of a sudden. Turn it up a little bit. Right when I do. Okay. We have our new headmate, Ghost, as Tama, who we believe did voice her last stream that we did, reading stream, but now we know that it's Ghost voicing Tama. We have our digit fictive Scare voicing Meadow, Chalky voicing Unile. We have Snuggle voicing Nemarine, Pew as the voice of Top Speed, and Pookie as Magicaloid 44. Oh, and of course, Gadget as Fav. Okay. Now, I don't want to rush through this, but I do want to maybe read a little bit faster than last time, because we are starting late, and we do want to do the Sonic X watch party with Fukuma right after this. We're really excited, both for the reading and for the watching. All right. I'm so excited to get back to this. Chapter 4, The Moonlit Magical Girl. So I hope the audio levels are okay. La Pucelle's death meant no one was cut that week. No one really questioned the cause of death either. If someone dies, I'm not cut. If I kill someone, I'm not cut. I want to live. I should kill. That was the best mindset, and eventually everyone would come to realize that. Okay, I have to read ahead a little bit. I was talking here. I think this is me talking. Bedtime, storytime, audio levels sound good. That's great here. Wonderful story to read before you go to bed. No, actually, that's not even a joke now that I think of it. Because, like I said, this is a dark story. But at least for us, we find dark stories comforting if they have an overall message of hope by the end. We love stories like that. Okay. So I think this is me, aka Cranberry, saying this. You think it'll be that easy?
It will. The medium to gather people this time is a mobile game aimed at a younger demographic, Pon. That's drawn in lots of them, and they're all young. Their youth makes them particularly emotional, so all we need to do is add a little fuel to the fire, Pon.
Fav was the one who had suggested using a mobile game as the medium, meaning he probably wanted to claim the success as his own. Cranberry had first met Fav some time ago, but this part of him still rubbed her the wrong way. Most likely, Fav also found Cranberry to be a pain as well. That was how work relationships should be. I'm not so sure about that. Cranberry rolled onto the bed and tapped her magical phone. A new header had been added to the start screen for Magical Girl Raising Project entitled Get Items. 4-dimensional bag can hold items of any size or weight that can be carried by one person. Its 4th dimension gives it unlimited storage. Invisibility cloak makes the wearer invisible to others. Also erases smell so dogs can't find you. Sorry, Tama. Sorry. Weapon. A weapon you can add to your costume can stand up to the abuse of superpowered combat. You may choose your weapon from the list. Give it a cool name. Energy pills. Medicine that makes you really pumped. This doesn't heal wounds, so don't make that mistake. Some side effects may occur from overuse. 10 pills per container. Rabbit's foot. Brings good luck when you're in big trouble. Whether that saves you or not still depends on you, so don't rely on it too much. In total, there were 5 downloadable items, and all of them were everyday tools from the Magical Kingdom. However, they each came with a price in order to use them. Fav, of course, had proudly announced that these items, with irreversible effects, would up the intensity of the fighting and cut off any means of escape for the girls. Cranberry spoke into the device. Fav.
Yes, Master. What is your request, Pon?
The black and white sphere with butterfly wings faded in from a corner of the screen. Are you sure adding these items won't ruin our goal of cultivating the strong? Some of these might allow the weaker ones to overcome the stronger ones. Hello, Scronin.
If that's all it takes to kill them, then they weren't really all that strong to begin with, Pon.
Fav did a flip in the air, scattering scales. Magical... Oh, that's not my line. Sorry.
Magical girls aren't just users of magic, Pon. The ones who pass that shallow selection test from the Magical Kingdom aren't true magical girls at all, Pon. They must be heroines, Pon. If they die some silly death just because items were added to the game, they're failures. Just consider them side characters that were supposed to die, Pon.
That's a lesson to everyone watching the stream. Anyone who dies was supposed to, so it's okay. Inside the screen, Fav's mouth twisted ever so slightly into what looked like a truly ominous smile.
Hey, Master! Fighting tough opponents is enough for you, right? And you hate a selection test that doesn't choose the strongest survivors, right? So this is just fine. This sets up the true magical girls to brutally crush the ones who scheme and suck up to survive.
After finishing his spiel, Fav did another flip and returned to his usual expressionless demeanor.
That's about it, Pon.
I see.
Fav is trying to grant your wish to fight at full power, so the least you can do is grant Fav's wish for a super intense spectacle, Pon. That's our contract, Pon.
Am I part of this spectacle as well?
Maybe.
Fav smiled, his expression unchanging. Let me see. I'm trying to see who's saying this line now. I think this is Snow White. Yes, okay. Are these items free?
Magical Girl Raising Project is always free to play. You will never be charged money, Pon.
But there are numbers under the names. The bag has a 10, the cloak has a 25, the weapon's 5, the medicine's 3, the rabbit's foot 6.
You won't pay money, but Fav never said there won't be a price, Pon.
Hi, Rasa. Maybe. Smile. So I do have to pay something?
Part of your life, Pon. The weapon takes 5 years, the bag 10, the cloak takes 25 years. The stronger a magical item, the greater the price you have to pay to create it. But for girls like you with magic that isn't suited for fighting, this is a bailout, Pon. You're supposed to use these items to close the gap between you and the others, Pon. When things are this dangerous, what's a bit of your life that you won't, that you don't even know you have?
Snow White leaned against the concrete block wall and slid down. Maybe it was the dirty alley devoid of even drunkards and stray dogs, but she felt alone in the world. She'd sought out a place to spend some time by herself, but the solitude was torture. She wiped her sticky, sweaty cheek with the back of her hand. Her skin was pale as a ghost's, too. So Takeshibe's death had been explained as a traffic accident. Snow White had attended the wake and funeral as Koyuki Himikawa, but she couldn't bring herself to look at his corpse because it was so mutilated. The car that hit him had been discovered in a parking garage, but it was a stolen vehicle. The police still hadn't found the driver. Snow White wiped her eyes. This time her hand was covered in tears. She thought they'd all dried up after she sobbed her eyes out over La Pucelle's death, but just remembering her friend made them well and overflow again. So... She remembered the first day they'd talked atop the steel tower, the day she saved her from the candy thieves, the day she swore to be the sword that protected her, the day they shared their magic with each other and Pinky promised to not tell the others, the day she risked her life to save a kid from an oncoming car and later said embarrassingly, Oh, wait, this is... Sorry, my body just moved on its own. The day they celebrated a web post that called her a knight who protected a child. The day of discourse over manga and anime. The days, not just one day. The days they sat together and watched anime as children. She recalled how, as Sota, he had looked at her with such jealousy when she proclaimed she'd become a magical girl. How as La Pucelle she had proudly shown her that a boy could become a magical girl after all. How, as Sota, he walked to school kicking a soccer ball. How Sota's mom bawled over losing her son, who had just entered middle school. His warmth as he held her, the heat blooming deep in her chest. Time seemed to blur. Memory after memory floated through her mind and disappeared. She couldn't go on like this. It wasn't right. She knew this, but her heart was frozen in place. It wouldn't let her move forward. So...
Cry all you like. No one's going to pity you, Pon. Wow.
Her magical phone had fallen screen side down, which muffled Fob's voice more than usual. It sounded as if the creature was somewhere else.
Do you think if you spill red wine, someone will come save you, Pon? Are you going to let La Pucelle's sacrifice go to waste, Pon?
The word sacrificed weighed on her back like a cross. They still hadn't captured the driver that ran over Sota. Was his killer actually a human, though? Or was it a cat? I think it was Scooper. I think he's confessing. She knew it was a horrifying thing to consider, but she couldn't get it out of her mind. That Scooper was the killer. Could one of her fellows have killed Sota? Was there a magical girl in the city capable of killing others like her? If so, then if she got one of those new items...
Cheer up! For La Pucelle's sake, too, Pon. Summon some courage and choose an item, Pon.
Snow White shakily reached out for her device and opened up the item selection screen. Listed were 5 items. Underneath them, the numbers. My life. Her heart pounded heavily and her breathing roughened. She exhaled, then inhaled. The sounds of her ragged breaths echoed in the empty alley. The ground shook. Or was that just her imagination? Snow White couldn't tell. If she took an item, she'd lose part of her life. At the least, that would be 3 years. At the most, 25. What would La Pucelle do? Her fingers shaking, she clicked purchase. The invisibility cloak that took 25 years of her life. With that, she could escape any attacker, possibly. Sold out. Sold out? The words on the screen indicated the item was out of stock. No matter which one she clicked, the same message appeared.
I told you, Pone. The early bird gets the worm, so you should have bought it fast.
She dropped the magical phone. It bounced and rolled into the steel trash cans behind a restaurant with a clank.
It's always first come, first served.
Whatever Fob was saying, Snow White couldn't hear it. She just stared dumbly at her empty right hand. Weapon, invisibility cloak, energy pills. Together, Swim Swim, Tama, and the Peaky Angels had 3 items. They tried to buy them all. I almost said bury them all. But the rabbit's foot and 4-dimensional bag were already gone.
We should have looked earlier. Don't say that, sis.
After hearing from the Peaky Angels about the download items being up for sale, the 4 had gathered at Okatsuji. They had got Fov to explain the prices of the items, and Swim Swim instantly decided they should purchase them. She instructed Tama to take the weapon and the Peaky Angels to get the energy pills. When the Peaky Angels complained that part of their lifespan was too expensive, she purchased the invisibility cloak herself. When a leader takes the initiative and gives up 25 years of their life, who would make a fuss about shortening their own life by a few years? Through her actions, Swim Swim demonstrated how necessary this was and moved the other 3 to action. Unile ended up paying for the medicine after losing a game of rock, paper, scissors. They hadn't quite believed Fov's explanation that they'd lose years off their life, but as soon as they bought the items, they knew it was true. The moment they clicked the purchase button, a shuddering sensation ran up their spines, as if something had been taken from deep inside. In its place, only a chill remained.
Swim Swim, aren't you scared of dying 25 years earlier?
Tama asked. Yes.
Really? Then why?
I'm the leader. It was important. Swim Swim looked the same as always. No burdens, fear, or hesitation. She was so unperturbed. You'd never guess she'd just lost 25 years of her life. It was appalling. How would Ruler have responded? What would Ruler have done? Ruler had dominated Tama's thoughts recently. Their old leader had been full of confidence. She'd been smart, strong. Confidence, brains, strength. Tama possessed none of these, but Ruler had. She was also the one who taught Tama how to be a magical girl. Most who tried to teach her ended up throwing her out halfway through. Kindergarten, elementary school, middle school, the story was always the same. Her teachers either wrote her off as a lost cause, or she graduated before fully grasping the content. But Ruler hadn't abandoned her. She'd call her an idiot, hit her, and abused her, but she still allowed her to stay. Tama's attempts to nuzzle her leg were met with kicks, but she hadn't minded if it meant she wasn't abandoned. The day she'd received her collar, she'd been so happy she ran around the temple grounds and got a scolding for being obnoxious. She'd assumed Swim Swim thought the same of Ruler, until she suggested a betrayal. At first, she thought it was a joke or something, or maybe there was some deeper meaning she didn't understand. She remained confused throughout the whole process, until eventually the coup d'etat succeeded, and Swim Swim became the new leader after Ruler's death. Despite knowing the plan, she hadn't understood it, so the news was a huge surprise to Tama. However, she was in no position to object, and unable to do anything. Here she was at Okatsuji.
Oh, amazing! So magical! It really seems sharp. I wouldn't want to be on the wrong end of that.
Swim Swim's weapon resembled a naginata polearm, but lacked the distinctive curved blade. Instead, the steel resembled a giant knife. The handle was about a yard long, the blade maybe a foot. It certainly wasn't worth all the praise the angels lavished upon it, and it looked unrefined and awkward. Were they just trying to suck up?
What you gonna name it? The instructions said to give it a cool name, right?
Swim Swim bowed her head and thought for a while. Ruler, she muttered. Unable to discern why she gave it the exact same name as their former leader, the Peaky Angels and Talma all stared at the weapon. It shone in the light of the angels' halos. Swim Swim had proposed they'd share the items among themselves. Ultimately, Talma ended up with the invisibility cloak, Swim Swim with the weapon, and the Peaky Angels with the energy pills. The reason Swim Swim wound up with the cheapest item despite paying the most was because she herself requested it. No one dissented. Don't you want to use the best item? Talma asked Swim Swim. This weapon goes with my magic. That cloak goes with yours, she said. Then she added, the Peaky Angels are holding the pills for safekeeping. Talma wondered what she meant by the cloak going with her magic, but she couldn't think of a reason. She sort of understood why a weapon suited Swim Swim. She looked best when wielding it, after all. Swim Swim reached out and patted her on the head, as if she thought Talma was troubled, instead of attempting to think. Ruler most likely would have yelled at her and called her an idiot. She wasn't sure which she preferred. Maybe one day she would be. Everyone had to know, even Talma knew, and she was as slow as they come. La Pucelle's accidental death that week meant no one was cut. Then the items had been added. Most of them seemed more appropriate for purposes other than helping people. Swim Swim and the Peaky Angels were raring to go. When she considered what for, Talma shivered. Hola! Buenos noches, if it's nighttime where you are at. High quality. ¿Cómo estás? Quite well, thank you. I was doing a bit rough earlier, but doing better now. I love reading this book. Buenos noches. High-quality furnishings decorated an elegant room. A shag carpet with a complex design, a small ebony desk, a black leather sofa, a gorgeous chandelier, simple watercolor paintings in lavish frames, a three-pronged coat rack, honey-colored candles, and a dull silver candelabra. There was even a pillar and solid wood flooring. Trying to think who's saying this. I think this is Calamity Mary. This must be the club's VIP room, she thought as she surveyed the place. Calamity Mary inspired as many bad rumors as there were stars in the sky. Actually, that might have been Magical 844 saying that. Thank you, Fukuma, for contributing to Magma's cult totem. Calamity Mary inspired as many bad rumors as there were stars in the sky, one of which was that she had ties to a criminal gang. She'd entered the building via the back door and passed smoothly through to this room, ignoring the other guests and getting past the black suits without hassle. Given this, it was hard to deny the stories. Magical 844 was a robot magical girl. She wore backpack-shaped booster rockets on her back, a weapon rack around her waist, an anti-reflective hood over her main camera, and various smaller thrusters all over her body for minor adjustments during flight. And her body was made of magicalium alloy that felt like human skin but was harder than steel. If the other magical girls were humans in cosplay, then Magical Aid 44 was a robot made to look human. She was certainly different, that was for sure. Yet none of the staff shrieked in shock or pointed at her. Their expressions hardened, but that was all. Your what do you mean a webu? I'm sorry. I'm not sure what you mean.
Your teachings are sinking in, it seems.
Kiss my ass will get you nowhere.
Calamity Mary chugged the amber liquid, filling her baccarat crystal glass, with her legs spread and her hips sunk into the sofa. She formed the very picture of a gunslinger out of a spaghetti western. Magical Aid 44 remembered the post that had made the rounds on the internet at the beginning of the month about Calamity Mary's assault on the apartment of a triad gangster. Some reports said she'd acted alone, but the stories that had called it a paid hit were more accurate. The compensation would be, say, permission to drink all the expensive alcohol in a high-class club and free reign to use it for her own personal reasons, while the staff pretended not to notice anyone she brought with her. Knowing her, it was quite simple. The relationship was merely that of veteran and newbie. But even so, she understood that any comments about Calamity Mary's behavior would cost you.
The items are on sale now, said Magical Aid 44.
What'd you buy?
Nothing. I value my life,
she answered honestly. No one lied to Calamity Mary.
So boring. I bought the bag. It seemed useful.
I envy you.
How many times that day had Calamity Mary knocked back a glass of that amber liquid, while Magical Aid 44 remained expressionless on the outside? On the inside, she sighed. Magical girls were immune to poison. Their physical strength nullified its effects. So obviously... And that's a ban. We're going to stream what we want to stream. So, I'm sorry. If you don't like that, you can watch someone else's stream. I don't understand why someone would do that. But I know it's not unheard of. Like people do that to lots of folks. They'll pop in and say, this game is stupid, play something else. And it's like, no. Thank you, Fukama. I'm glad others are enjoying it. So weird. Okay. Yeah, that person just followed to say that. That's why we have our chat on followers only. Because of people like that. Because, yes, some people will follow just to say something like that. But a lot of people who would say something like that don't want to follow. So yes, it can still happen even with followers only on, but I think it occurs a lot less. Anyway. I'm really glad to be supported, honestly. That's why it's so easy to laugh at people. Like, oh no. I should have assumed the worst of someone after that happened. Someone else follows and I just go, oh no. I'm so sorry. I don't mean to assume. Okay, maybe I should have assumed. That could have been an alt, maybe. Huh. Anyway. Anyway. I don't know what is going on tonight. Okay. You can't insult someone's interest and then ask a favor. You could say, "Oh, this is a lovely, lovely story. But would you please take a moment to read this poem? And then I might consider." Anyway. I hope they're not still there and will follow under a different name now. Anyway. Donate $100 per poem. Absolutely. I would love to read a poem. Even, honestly, if it was that person donating $100, I might consider it despite everything. Because money. Anyway. Sorry for that distraction. $0:23, what's that? Oh, the time. Is it midnight and 23 minutes? It's 11, well, it was 11:23. It's 11:24 now. Where did I go? While Magical Aid 44 remained expressionless on the outside, on the inside she sighed. Magical girls were immune to poison. Their physical strength nullified its effects. So obviously they couldn't get drunk off alcohol, yet Calamity Mary continued to drink. Was it one of her human habits, or just a part of her magical girl character? Wait. We have to, read ahead to make sure we know who's saying each line.
So, did you give any thought to my proposal?
What was it? You wanted to team up with me?
Yes, that is what I said over the magical phone.
La Pucelle's death had meant no one was cut for 1 week. In other words, if anyone died, she would be the one cut, regardless of candy count. Some most likely considered this method quicker than simply earning candy. It was better to act, than wait to be killed. So far, there was Swim's band of 4, Top Speed with Ripple, and Sister Nana with Winter Prison. Magical girls were starting to team up more and more, and it was becoming far too dangerous to act alone. The ones still without a group were Snow White, the musician of the forest, Cranberry, Calamity Mary, and the new girl. Of course, I need to say that. Of those, Magical Aid 44 only had a connection to Calamity Mary, albeit a tenuous one. Mary was also the most reliable in combat.
I do not mind if you think of me as an errand girl. The only way I survive is if I depend on your power.
I see.
Calamity Mary stopped drinking and stared into Magical Aid 44's eyes, as you do. She seemed to be appraising her, or searching for a hint of a lie. Or maybe she was just staring blankly with no thoughts behind her eyes at all. The room was soundproofed from the outside world, and without even a single ticking clock, it was truly silent. The glass in her eyes cracked.
You know, the good thing about you is you always seem ready to stab me in the back.
Betraying you is an unwinnable game.
I like how you keep me on my toes. If it's not today, it'll be tomorrow. Or the day after that.
Please.
Magical Aid 44 laughed, trying to dodge her suspicion, but there was no telling if she actually had. In her head, she marveled. Calamity Mary was absolutely correct. Magical Aid's magic changed daily. Each day, she could remove at random from her weapon rack one of 444,444,444 useful futuristic gadgets that became usable for that day only. If she could consistently obtain powerful gadgets, she'd never need to team up with anyone. She'd simply destroy all her enemies with ease. But someday she'd end up with items she could not for the life of her understand how to use, like the fat removal manipulator or the insect breeding appraiser. Those were hardly useful. For all her good days, she had equally bad ones, and that was no good. Oh, I'm about to come to an image, so I'm going to put that on the screen. I think it's this one. I'll just have images on the screen for like a page or two, depending on how it goes, or how long it takes for me to... Anyway. Calamity Mary was a brutish, violent, irrational, and vulgar woman, but that was most likely the type of magical girl the management was looking for. Under the current rules, those were the only ones who could survive after the addition of the items. Thus, Magical Aid 44 had to follow suit.
I'd rather die than partner with a fathead like Ruler or an idiot like Sister Nana. Winter Prison and Cranberry, I'd rather fight than serve. Snow White should just shut up and die.
Calamity Mary's appraisal of the other girls seemed convincing, at least to Magical Aid 44. The gunslinger was hardly the intelligent or logical type, but she did have experience.
Then what about me? Magical Aid 44?
I guess you could be a good underling. Good servant to your master. You get a passing grade.
So will you team up with me?
If you pass my test, I don't mind letting you watch my back.
Test?
Go kill someone.
Joy spread across her face as she imagined something.
Don't worry. If you die instead, I'll be sure to avenge you. I'll host the grandest, most extravagant, most breathtakingly bloody massacre in your honor.
Okay, it's switching POV, so I think I will take this image down. Support pole, sign, concrete base. She tore them apart with the ease of a knife through butter. Ripple shredded the steel signs, then chucked the pieces into a basket, one after another. No matter how she threw the steel, it would morph unnaturally and land in the basket, as if it had been sucked in. Her magic, the accuracy of her shuriken, seemed to affect anything she threw with her hands. The rules were surprisingly lax in that regard. Kitayado locals had been complaining for over a month that the 3 foreign road signs, complete with concrete around the base, as if they'd been ripped straight out of the ground, had been abandoned in an emergency fire lane. Apparently, there was some confusion about which department was in charge of such matters. Until they were disposed of, they'd just sit there wasting people's time, fanning the flames of their anger. So that night, the 2 magical girls worked to dispose of them. All that was left to do was leave the pieces marked as unburnable trash at the dump, and their mission would be complete. Once morning came, someone would see it and take care of it. This would most likely net them each 100 pieces of candy, a large amount in line with the effort required. Okay.
Okay, all ready? Hop on.
The wait. The wait. Will it be okay?
Oh, is that what you're worried about? Nah, no problemo.
The cargo hung from Topspeed's broomstick, Rapid Swallow. Thanks to the additional concrete, the signs might have weighed about the same as a person, though it was difficult to tell. Ripple worried whether the broomstick would still float, but Topspeed easily took flight with Ripple and the remains of the signs in tow.
I can't go as fast, though. Not because of the weight, but because the air resistance and stuff. I don't really understand it.
Ripple clicked her tongue. The broomstick was certainly slower than normal, but that wasn't what irritated her. It was because she was so used to sitting in the back seat that she instantly recognized the slower speed. They had utterly and unequivocally become a pair. Even the internet was calling them the witch and ninja duo. Ripple tisked and tightened her grip around Topspeed's waist.
Don't get so mad.
I'm not mad.
Sure, it sucks we couldn't snag an item, but how many things are really worth paying for with your lifespan?
By the time Ripple had learned the items were on sale, they were all sold out. Apparently the same went for Topspeed. She'd called right away.
The game's hook was that it was free to play anyway. This is nothing.
If they were partners, fine. Ripple just wished she could trust her partner more. Topspeed simply wasn't reliable. She kowtowed to Calamity Mary, even groveled, and she couldn't even obtain a single item. Ripple found herself constantly wondering if a mere chauffeur was worth calling a partner. We could be killed without one.
By who?
Another magical girl.
No way. We can always run away if it looks like we're about to die. Who's gonna catch me if I snatch you up and zoom off into the sky?
Some of them can fly, like the angels in the video. Her cat says, meow.
Sure, the Peaky Angels on Magical Aid 44 can fly, but there's a huge difference between flying and flying faster than anyone, Ripple. No magical girl can catch me.
Topspeed grabbed the brim of her hat and pulled it lower. It was impossible to tell her expression from behind, but her tone was terribly light.
I'm not bluffing or blowing hot air either. I'm doing this magical girl thing because I can run away whenever I like. I can't die for at least 6 more months.
She was constantly going on about those 6 months, so Ripple constantly asked her what would happen, but she never got a satisfying answer. Maybe she'd find out in 6 months. Underneath Underneath the moonlight, the broomstick carried its 2 passengers across the sky. Snow White spun to look behind her in the empty alley. Fear coursed through her veins, and her ears strained to hear even the tiniest noise. She could have sworn she heard something drop on the asphalt. Maybe it was just her imagination. Practically every day since La Pucelle's death, she'd felt someone nearby and called out, but received no response. Sometimes she sensed something approaching and lay in wait, but no one ever showed. Whenever she turned around, no one was there. She knew her nerves were running high, but she couldn't relax. She was too afraid. Snow White ran. She darted from alley to alley in the long shadows created by the moonlight. She tried her best to keep out of the light, but after 3 turns, she heard a noise behind her. Something was rhythmically tapping on concrete. When Snow White stopped, the noise stopped. Footsteps? Goosebumps ran up her skin. She turned around to find a pair of eyes staring right back at her. A magical girl she'd never seen before was hiding behind a wall. She had on an apron dress with a puffy sleeve, socks, shoes, drawers, and a ribboned headband. She was the spitting image of Alice from Alice in Wonderland, but all her clothes were black. The only thing on her was a creepy plush rabbit under her arm. Her hunched posture reminded Snow White of a predator about to pounce on its prey.
Finally, I found you.
Joy shone within her dull, irisless eyes, and the corners of her lips twisted upward. Snow White couldn't move a muscle. 1 step, 2 steps, 3. The girl slowly drew closer. On the 4th, she was about 15 feet away. Snow White tried desperately to keep her knees from shaking. After that, the girl stopped. The black Alice cocked her head. Slowly, ever so slowly, it continued to tilt until, with a pop, it fell off. Where her head had been, Snow White could clearly see her windpipe, her veins, and even her spine. The next second, a geyser of blood showered the small street. The decapitated body sank to its knees and collapsed on top of its head. Snow White struggled to understand what had just happened. Covered in the black Alice's blood, she stared wide-eyed and unblinking. at the convulsing corpse.
Well, it appears I ended up saving you.
A robot appeared from behind the Black Alice's body and stepped over it, seemingly not worried if the blood stained her shoes. She splashed toward Snow White through the pool forming from the headless corpse.
We have met and chat many times, have we not? I am Magicaloid 44.
She looked exactly like a robot. Her skin was plasticky, her eyes red. Distinctive designs added a magical girl touch to the mechanical bits on her back, legs, hips, and other places on her body. On her back, she wore a red backpack, much like an elementary schooler's.
You know, I imagined I might experience sickness, or uncontrollable shaking, or even ecstasy, some kind of emotional response. But I only feel disgust, like I did when I was a child, and we watched pigs being butchered on that school trip. An instinctual disgust, perhaps.
Her face had held no expression, but her tone suggested she was trying to joke.
This is my first time killing a person. A magical girl, but it is not very interesting. I guess I will never understand why Calamity Mary loves killing so much.
Magicaloid 44 extended her right hand, and Snow White recoiled.
Can you see it? Can you see it? There are fine threads attached to my fingers. I guess you cannot. Boy, I am glad today's mystery gadget turned out to be useful.
Something glittered in the moonlight, but it was impossible to tell exactly what. Magicaloid 44 swiped her right hand to the side, and without a sound, 5 cuts appeared in the concrete wall next to her. Snow White gasped.
My plan was to just kill you.
She kicked the head at her feet, sending it rolling over to the other girl. Snow White barely managed to remain standing. If it had landed face up, she surely would have sunk to the pavement, but the face was toward the ground.
I was not planning to kill someone else. Though this is goodbye for you too there's no two there. Though this is goodbye for you as well. There is no reason to keep you alive. Maybe Calamity Mary will be more pleased with 2 bodies instead of 1. If murder repulsed me, I would be more careful. But it is no big deal. Well, goodbye.
Magicaloid 44 raised her right hand, and a loud screech erupted, like metal being pierced. Her arm still in the air, the robot looked down to her chest. Something was protruding from it. Someone had impaled her through the chest with an arm. Unable to believe what she was seeing, Magicaloid 44 stared at the arm as it lifted her up and slammed her into the crimson puddle. Blood drenched Snow White and dyed her white clothes almost entirely red. She'd held it in for a long time, but that was too much. A scream escaped from deep within her throat. Magicaloid 44's impaler was none other than the decapitated Black Alice, whose head still lay at Snow White's feet. Her own scream woke her up. She jumped out of bed, sweating profusely. Her pajamas were soaked and sticky and gross, and not just her pajamas, but her sheets, blanket, and pillow covers too.
Koyuki, what's the matter?
From downstairs, her mother called with worry.
Nothing,
she answered. A dream? She hoped it was only a dream, but had been too real. Though something like that could never happen in reality, it had. Koyuki glanced down at her right hand. In it, she clutched a fluffy white rabbit's foot. Chat number 4. Fav.
So? Has everyone mastered their items, Pum? What? Enough with the formalities, Pum. Oh, fine. This week, Magicaloid 44 was cut. Well, see you next week. Oh, Cranberry. Thank you for the music, Pum.
You're welcome, Fav. I mean, all I did was go to YouTube and hit play, but thank you. Or you're welcome, I should say. Chapter 5, Farewell to the Hindrance. Swim's magical phone rang. Tama fell silent, and even Unile and Meanile stopped chatting to listen to her conversation with Fav. After exchanging a few words, she slipped the phone between her breasts. What's the matter? Did something happen?
Sister Nana sent a message. She wants to meet.
Seriously? Winter prison is scary! What do we do? What?
Above all, deal with strong enemies swiftly.
If they couldn't win in a fair fight, then they would just have to fight dirty. Swim Swim gave the angels her instructions. That actually might have been a flashback of Ruler saying that. We kind of just assumed Swim Swim was repeating Ruler's words, but that could have been supposedly a flashback of Ruler saying that. I don't know. It's kind of hard to tell without voiceover sometimes. Who's saying what? Atop the desk sat a lone ball of fluffy white fur. The plethora of plush animals in the room wasn't unusual for a girl to have, but this item was not like the others.
What is this?
The rabbit's foot listed in the game, Plum. Something lucky will happen when you're in trouble, Plum.
Why do I have it?
Maybe you picked it up after someone dropped it?
Who is someone?
Logically speaking, probably Hardcore Alice, Plum.
Hardcore Alice?
The girl who looks like an all-black version of Alice from Alice in Wonderland.
So, I'm just thinking, didn't earlier in the book they called Alice in Wonderland something else? Because we thought they couldn't say Alice in Wonderland because of copyright issues, but maybe they realized it's okay later on and started to call it Alice in Wonderland. Wasn't it like Alice's Adventures or something? I don't remember. Anyway, so it really had happened. Visions of the shambling headless corpse resurfaced. Bile rose in her throat, but she suppressed it. Her heart had never been at peace since La Pucelle died. Every time she remembered her death, the urge to throw up and cry overtook her.
You won't lose your sanity, at least, so don't worry, Plum. Business depends on our magical girls remaining healthy in body and mind, Plum.
As if he had read her mind, Fav cut off all escape. Anger bloomed in her. She wanted to scream, smash the magical phone, and stamp on the pieces. But she wasn't brave enough to hang up on the only one she could still converse with. Hardcore Alice had been decapitated and walked away. Such a scene you'd only see in nightmares. Yet it had all been real. Her death hadn't been reported in chat, so she was still alive. If the rabbit's foot belonged to her, then what did she think, now that Snow White had it? She doubted she'd get away with a friendly explanation that she'd picked it up by accident.
Can't you give this back to her for me?
You'd have to do that in person, Plum. Fav can contact her for you, though, Plum.
She'd asked precisely because she didn't want to meet in person, but he didn't seem to understand. Or maybe he did, and he was saying this on purpose. Was it malice she sensed from the black and white sphere floating daintily in the air? Or was it indifference? Snow White collapsed on the desk and cried. 5 minutes of sobbing later, she raised her head, a little recovered. She thought about how much easier it would be to just let her mind go. From the floor below, her mother called, "Koyuki, dinner time!" "Coming!" She stood from her chair. She reached out to turn off the magical phone, but just before she could, Fav piped up half an octave higher than normal.
"Oh, I have a message, Plum!"
"Message?"
"Sister Nana wishes to meet you, Plum. What do you say, Plum?"
Magical girls didn't get many opportunities to meet others like them in person. Of course, if two girls paired up like Snow White and La Pucelle, Sister Nana in Winter Prison, or Topspeed and Ripple, they would naturally see each other. But outside of the mentor system, there weren't any reasons to meet. No major accidents or events that required them to join forces had occurred since they became active in End City. Plus, some girls were more territorial than others, and they were strong enough to maintain their own areas. So there was no real reason for anyone to set foot in another's neighborhood. Sister Nana had visited other territories, except the late rulers, with friendly intentions before, but after Calamity Mary nearly killed her, she had adopted a firm policy of non-involvement and non-intervention. That is, until this game, to reduce the number of magical girls to 8. Personally, Snow White had only ever seen Sister Nana in Winter Prison in real life once, before Sister Nana stopped leaving her house. Snow White arrived early, but Sister Nana and Winter Prison were already there. Every time she saw Winter Prison, she marveled at how cool she looked. She was more like a prince than a magical girl. As for Sister Nana, she exuded kindness. The solemn, abandoned supermarket, serving as their meeting place, reminded her of a rundown chapel.
It's good to see you again, Snow White.
Hey.
Hello, Sister Nana. Hello, Winter Prison. I heard about La Pucelle. It is truly regrettable.
She clasped Snow White's hands and dropped her head. Tears stung Snow White's eyes. Was she happy that others missed La Pucelle too, or did remembering La Pucelle's death make her sad? She couldn't really say. Sister Nana raised her head.
We cannot allow such tragedy to continue. This is the time for us to band together. We can pool our knowledge and find a solution.
The tears welling in her eyes spilled over. Sister Nana's hands were warm and secure around hers. Everyone she'd met since the start of the game had been hostile, save for La Pucelle. None of them had spared a kind word or needed her. To them, she was no more than prey. Snow White nodded.
I want to help. Please, let me help. Oh, thank you, Snow White. Let us work hard together.
Great.
Meow.
Great tears continued pouring from Snow White's eyes, and through her blurred vision, she could see Sister Nana smiling. Maybe it was the tears, but her smile looked crooked somehow. Still, it was reassuring. Sister Nana looked away and spoke to someone behind Snow White.
What do you say? You left before we could hear your answer the other day.
Had she invited another magical girl? Snow White turned around toward whoever Sister Nana was talking to, and there was Hardcore Alice, a dark parody of her namesake, peeking out from the entrance to the supermarket. Snow White bit back a scream and jumped to hide behind Winter Prison. Her hands were still firmly held by Sister Nana's, so she nearly fell over trying to change places with the nun. But nonetheless, she moved extraordinarily fast.
Do you two know each other?
Yes, we do. Hardcore Alice answered before Snow White could tell her about the attack. All the girl in white could do was quiver in fear behind Winter Prison. Suspicion darkened the prince-like girl's expression, but Sister Nana continued without concern for Snow White's reaction.
Well then, will you help us, Hardcore Alice?
Yes, I understand. I will help. Hardcore Alice spoke blankly, like she was reading off a script. Her inelegant speech sounded like a translation of her response from a foreign language.
Oh, today is such a wonderful day! Thank you so much!
Apparently, Sister Nana didn't doubt her sincerity. She ran over to Hardcore Alice, clasped her hands, and shook them vigorously, just like she had with Snow White. The last thing Snow White wanted was to end up alone with Hardcore Alice by accident. But Sister Nana's constant delighted exclamations,
"We four are united in purpose!"
left her no opportunity to tell them the truth.
I have other meetings with magical girls planned for today. Perhaps our ranks will yet increase,
Sister Nana mused happily. Unable to think of a reason to stop her, Snow White ended up in the one situation she wanted to avoid, alone with Hardcore Alice. She tried to mutter a goodbye and extricate herself, but when she turned, she discovered Hardcore Alice following her. Awkwardly, she smiled and bowed, then set off quickly, rounded a corner, and looked back. She was still there. A shiver went up her spine. Maybe she'd only been playing nice earlier because Sister Nana and Winter Prison were there. But with them gone, she probably felt free to attack. Snow White put up her guard, but Hardcore Alice just stared, unmoving, as if her eyes had been glued there. Oh, right. Remembering Snow White, she reached into her pocket. Wait, who even said that? Oh, that was Snow White. Oh, right. Remembering, Snow White reached into her pocket. Her fingers touched soft soft purr, and she pulled out the rabbit's foot. She held it out to Hardcore Alice.
Is this yours? I didn't steal it. It was just there when I woke up. Honest.
That was the truth, but it seemed like a flimsy excuse. Snow White backed up, still holding out the rabbit's foot.
No.
Huh? Am I wrong?
That belongs to you.
No, I've never owned something like this.
I gave it to you, to Snow White, so it's yours.
Huh? Why? Why would you give it to me?
Hardcore Alice suddenly cocked her head, startling Snow White. She almost expected her head to fall off again. What exactly had happened the night Magicaloid 44 beheaded her? On closer inspection, there were no scars or bandages on her neck. A natural assumption would be that her magic was responsible, but the power to survive decapitation was too much to believe.
Because I felt like it.
Huh?
I felt like it, so I gave it to you.
But why?
Hardcore Alice cocked her head again and stared.
Because I felt like it.
Yesterday, Hardcore Alice had been a blood-covered monster that could move even after death, inspiring a self-explanatory fear. But this Hardcore Alice, this magical girl cocking her head at Snow White, blocked the way as an unfathomable object of terror. Water gushed from the fountain in the center of the town square in a simple rhythm. The show of flashing lights and changing spray arcs was over. The fountain simply continued its work in a robotic manner, though it was in fact a machine, as if the lively waterworks of only a few minutes ago had never even taken place. The spectators drifted away one by one, abandoning the benches around the fountain, signaling the end of the light show. Ripple tisked. Every month on the 15th at 10 p.m., the fountain in End City's Central Park hosted a light show. The infrequency of the lovely display made it particularly special. The lights even changed depending on the season, flaring bright pink in April, when the cherry blossoms were in bloom, and replicating exploding fireworks in August, and ensured more people came to watch. Simpsons, King of the Hill, Family Guy, Futurama, Teen Hunger Force. You mean Aqua Teen Hunger Force, I think? The Squidbillies, Robot Chicken, and Happy Tree Friends appropriate for children that are 7 or younger. If not, why? I would probably say no, but I know some children are able to handle things and be very emotionally mature about it, but in general, I would say no. Although we haven't really seen much of any of those, except for Happy Tree Friends. We love Happy Tree Friends. Good night, Rasa. Have a wonderful night and sweet dreams. Although The Simpsons, isn't that rated PG? I can't remember. It might depend on the episode. I know some shows have different ratings for different episodes. A bigger audience meant more problems and more work for a magical girl. All the potential witnesses also lowered the risk of an attack. What rating is Happy Tree Friends? I'm pretty sure that's rated... I was going to say M, but M is a video game rating. But I guess I would say... Wait. I know that it's definitely adult. Like, what rating is the equivalent of TV? I don't remember. I know movies is R. But Happy Tree Friends is... I feel, actually, there's a lot of media that's made for adults that is popular with kids, and Happy Tree Friends is definitely one of them. And I'm glad we're not planning on having kids, because that's a debate. Yeah, it definitely has a lot of violence. Like, it really depends on the kid, specific kid, if it's okay, but you won't know unless they see it. And so I don't think it's worth it. I think kids should wait until they're older to see such things. But if the kid, like, for instance, we saw a kid with a Five Nights at Freddy's t-shirt once. Very young child, like 4, at the grocery store. And it's like, I don't think children should be playing that, but I'm not going to want to take it away from a child who, you know, is already attached and isn't having any kind of bad response from it. I'm just glad we're not going to be a parent. Speaking of Five Nights at Freddy's, that's happening Tuesday. Anyway, that'll be a lot of fun. I forgot if I read this, so I'm just going to read it again. A bigger audience meant more problems and more work for a magical girl. All the potential witnesses also lowered the risk for an attack. Top Speed's plan had seemed sound, so Ripple had agreed. They watched the entire affair from the roof of the park's multi-purpose auditorium. Completed the previous summer, but not a single problem had cropped up. After enjoying the colorful display, the people quietly left. The only thing the girls had done was dispose of cans, empty convenience store food containers, and broken glass before people had showed up. Had this been Jonan, would there have been more of a disturbance? A fight or two might have broken out in Kubekahama and Kobiki, where fishermen and tradesmen still resided, but nothing of the sort happened in Nakayado. That was what made it Nakayado, after all. And while Ripple liked that aspect, right now what she wanted more than anything was a problem. The ninja tisked again. Perhaps she should be happy about the peace, but there was no way for her to earn candy.
Man, good thing nothing happened.
It's not a good thing.
You say something?
No.
Wasn't that a pretty sight? The moon was out and everything. So we could see the lights all the way from over here. We should have brought some booze to watch it with.
Ripple reached into a Tupperware container, picked out a mushroom with her fingers, and popped it into her mouth. Top Speed could be annoying, but her cooking was always good. The stewed vegetables were juicy with soup stock. I can't drink alcohol.
Why not?
I'm underage.
Huh? You mean not just as a magical girl, but for real? In real life? Wow, I just can't see it. Ripple, how old are you actually?
17.
Seriously? I'm 19.
If Ripple wasn't wrong, a 19-year-old was still a minor in their country. Naturally, that meant she shouldn't be drinking. Ripple clicked her tongue.
So you're younger than me, huh? I thought you were my age. Maybe older.
She had thought she was older and still used that tone with her? Ripple made her signature sound of irritation and reached out for another stewed veggie. Potato this time. It was good.
Is school fun?
It's whatever.
You have friends?
No.
What about family?
No.
Man, you seem just like me when I was 17. I'm getting deja vu here. Creepy.
Not many could resist potentially acting older once they learned they were talking to someone younger. Ripple thought it was inane, but she didn't tell Top Speed that.
You're super honest, though. You answer any question I ask. When I was 17, I was more like a knife. Like, anyone who tried to get close got cut. I'm all dull now, though.
Ripple clicked her tongue.
Ripple, ripple.
A high-pitched oh. That's Fav.
Ripple, ripple!
A high-pitched synthetic voice came from her magical phone. Fav turned it on remotely and projected a hologram.
Fav has a message for you, Pone. Calamity Mary wants to meet. She'll be waiting at the Hotel Priestess in Nakiato at 11 p.m. 2 days from now, Pone.
Ripple looked at Topspeed, and Topspeed looked at Ripple.
Come on, Ripple. No need to look so grumpy.
Apparently her distaste showed in her expression. Well, she hated the idea, hated it a lot. The fear of staring down a gun still hadn't faded, even months later. Sometimes she had nightmares of her death at Calamity Mary's hands. The characters have been magical girls longer than I thought. For that to have happened months ago. I'll pass.
Whoa, you'll pass? I know how you feel, but don't you think something really bad could happen if you don't go? I'm getting serious bad vibes. My one tiny wish to live another 6 months might not come true because of this. Would you stop that? Tell me why you keep saying 6 months already. Oh. Hey, Ripple! Ripple!
From within the projected image, Fav flapped his wing vigorously. So many scales flew off that a yellow cloud seemed to cover the image, nearly blocking him out.
Calamity Mary says it's important.
Ripple looked at Topspeed, and Topspeed looked at Ripple.
Seriously, no need to look so grumpy.
Ripple clicked her tongue. Swim Swim wasn't the only one who knew Ruler had been cautious of Calamity Mary. Tama and the Peaky Angels did too. Cautious was a weak word to describe her attitude, though. Perhaps hated was more fitting. She'd seen Calamity Mary as an enemy and something in her way. But despite all this, she had never tried to start a fight with her. The first target she'd chosen to steal candy from was Snow White, not Calamity Mary. Ruler had hated and feared the gunslinger at the same time. Why was this? Swim Swim did not know. The two had become magical girls long before Swim Swim had, so while she could guess what she might have happened, she doubted she'd ever truly know. For now, all she knew was that Calamity Mary was scary and nearly untouchable, and that Winter Prison, who'd gone toe-to-toe with her, was on the same level. Every magical girl in the city knew how Winter Prison had fought Calamity Mary to save Sister Nana. The nun had made sure to brag about Winter Prison's strength in chat after. Ruler was Swim Swim's idol, but also someone to surpass. And Ruler had feared Calamity Mary above all. The only one to fight on even terms with Calamity Mary was Winter Prison, who would be arriving soon. If she could beat Winter Prison, could she beat Calamity Mary? Surely it wasn't that simple, but possibly victory was indefinitely better than defeat. Possible victory was indefinitely better than defeat. Ruler would have thought the same. Both parties agreed to meet at Okatsuji. If they didn't manage to win on their home turf, they'd definitely lose their base. But regardless of the risks, she was set on Okatsuji. It was easier to set up traps in a familiar place, and they had the land advantage if a battle broke out. That didn't mean they needed to do anything fancy, though. Ruler had never been a fan of complicated things, and had always insisted that plans be as simple as possible. Swim Swim peered outside through the skylight. Filtered by the glass, the courtyard appeared faded. Something was moving. A bug? An endlessly chirping autumn insect, or a predatory insect eyeing it for a meal? Between Winter Prison's group and hers, which was the predator and which was the prey? Suddenly the chirping stopped, signaling the arrival of Sister Nana and her companion. 2 sets of footsteps creaked across the floorboards in the silent temple. The sound of a door opening followed the creaking. The sound of a cat yelling. The 2 faces appeared in the entrance. Swim Swim's eyebrow rose slightly. Sister Nana was in front. She wasn't supposed to be there.
It's good to see you again, Swim Swim. Thank you for your candy donation before.
Silently, Swim Swim stood up. She could sense tension from behind Sister Nana, or more accurately, from the person behind her. Sister Nana was smiling pleasantly, not perturbed in the slightest. Snow White and Hardcore Alice just recently agreed to join us. Swim Swim took a step forward. Winter Prison stayed still. Another step, and another. Finally, Winter Prison moved protectively in front of Sister Nana. 3. Perfect. Go. As Swim Swim gave the signal, Sister Nana screamed from behind Winter Prison. Still wary of Swim Swim, Winter Prison turned around, and her face froze in horror. Sister Nana shakily pointed at Sister Nana. There were 2 of them now. The other nun pushed past the first and clung to Winter Prison. Dumbfounded and unable to process what was going on, Winter Prison took her in her arms and received a dagger to the chest. Even with a dagger embedded in her, Winter Prison remained calm. There were 2 Sister Nanas. One was screaming, the other grinning. One was crying, the other holding a bloody dagger. The Sister Nana with the weapon kicked Winter Prison and backed off. Her body began warping. It bent, twisted, stretched, shrunk, and changed color, and after numerous transformations, the second Sister Nana became 2 angels. They smiled maliciously, not even trying to hide their excitement. That was when she understood how there had been 2 Sister Nanas, and how that tiny dagger had pierced her sturdy, muscular body. Winter Prison smiled back. Blood running from her mouth, she smiled. Her enemies were fools. Why had they changed back? If they had stayed as Sister Nana, she never could have attacked, even if she knew it was a fake. One of them had transformed into the magic dagger that now pierced Winter Prison's heart. Blood gushed from her chest. She couldn't breathe. Her consciousness dimmed, but she wouldn't die for a few more seconds. She couldn't die just yet. Run! She shouted at Sister Nana, then activated her magic. Walls of earth shot up, breaking through the floorboards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, stirring up clouds of dirt. The barriers struck the ceiling and trapped the angels. It was a prison. A winter prison. Winter Prison closed the gap in one stride, balling her left fist hard. She drove her hand into the earthen walls and shattered them, crushing one little angel within. One angel left, the one who had transformed into the dagger. Winter Prison chopped at her, attempting to rip through her neck with her bare right hand. Unfortunately, the blood spray from her first attack got in her eye, and as the blood loss reached a critical level, she just barely missed the timing. Her target inside the prison ducked, and Winter Prison chopped through the upper half of the earthen walls. She tried to attack again, but a hole suddenly opened up beneath her and threw her off balance. Swim Swim attacked, chopping off her right arm. Winter Prison watched her limb arc through the air. She remembered how she'd stroked Sister Nana's hair with that hand, those fingers. She couldn't sense Sister Nana nearby. Fortunately, she seemed to have escaped. Winter Prison relaxed. Please, please be safe, she prayed, before dropping to her knees and lowering her head. After Meadow had transformed into a dagger, Meadow had held her and hid under the invisibility cloak. She waited until Sister Nana arrived, then shapeshifted into her. With the real thing right in front of her, her disguise was perfect. Then she'd thrown off the invisibility cloak and shown herself to Winter Prison. The events with Calamity Mary had suggested Winter Prison would protect Sister Nana no matter what. But if she suddenly had 2 people to protect, and one even attacked her, surely Winter Prison would be too confused to react. And up until the stabbing, things had worked out perfectly. But then Meadow lost her life in the counterattack. And Sister Nana ran away so quickly no one spotted her. It was hardly a success. So, I don't know why. I was thinking Meadow was the angel that dies first. Okay. But yeah, it's coming back to me now. It is Meadow that's still alive. Meadow wailed and clung to the body of a girl about university age. This was Uniao's real form. Thomas sobbed next to her, too.
Una saved me in the end, didn't she? Yeah. Una.
Swim's powerlessness weighed painfully on her shoulders. Ruler would have done better. Swim still couldn't measure up. She had to learn from this mistake for next time. Alcohol didn't serve as a cure-all for long. For one, it was expensive. 2, there were the hangovers. 3, her husband's complaints. Thanks to that, alcohol never really became that magic medicine. Eventually, her daughter became an outlet for her frustrations. Under the pretext of discipline, she kicked her, beat her, burned her with cigarettes, and starved her. When she was drunk, the abuse became a wonderful source of stress relief, until her worthless husband ran away with the victim. She'd enjoyed bullying her daughter because of her own weakness. The weak could only bully the weaker, after all, and her daughter suffered for that. Sufficed for that, and suffered, to be frank. But it was a stopgap for what she really wanted. Her true wish was to torment someone stronger. The desperate pleas of a swaggering gangster gratified her in a way her daughter never could have. The strong, the self-important, the beautiful, the clever, the confident. The expressions of the esteemed when they fell to their knees at unstoppable violence. With pleasure like that, she'd never need to touch alcohol again. A small compact rested on her ebony desk. The little mirror reflected a woman in her 30s, nearly 40. She was the definition of a middle-aged woman past her prime. A wide smile spread across her face. She put her hands to her cheeks and shouted, "Calamity, miracle, sorry. Kududine.
Transform into the magical gunslinger, Calamity Mary."
Gone was the tired woman in the mirror. Now she had a holster strapped to her left thigh, a sheriff's badge on her breast, a tiny mole under her left eye, thick blonde hair extending down to her hips from underneath her 10-gallon hat, voluptuous breasts barely covered by a bikini-style top, a miniskirt exposing practically everything, soft thighs, long legs, and spurred cowboy boots. Meow. Popping her shapely hips to one side, she struck a pose. In the mirror now was a beautiful creature. There was no need to chant or pose while transforming, but in all the anime Calamity Mary had watched as a child, none of the girls could transform without it. Thus, she should do the same. There was no deeper meaning behind it. Meow. Calamity Mary understood her role. She was happy with it. It meant she could shame magical girls, the strongest and most honorable creatures in existence, and crush them underfoot. To her gun belt, she attached the 4-dimensional bag containing all kinds of important tools. 10 minutes had passed since she left the club. She ordered Fav to send for Ripple, then made her way to Ripple's designated neighborhood, Macchiato, to meet her. It was currently 10:45 p.m. It was almost time. Japan National Route X, which the locals called High Road, passed through Macchiato. Like its nickname indicated, the road stood 30 feet above the ground. Traffic law enforcement here was relatively lenient for a public highway, and this, combined with the sparse traffic outside of the New Year's rush, meant that vehicles often raced by at speeds far above the speed limit. From her perch atop the tallest hotel in the city, the Hotel Priestess, Calamity Mary watched the road. The cold wind whipped around her cheeks, threatening to blow away her 10-gallon hat, so she pulled it down tighter. Strong winds made sniping difficult, but with Calamity Mary's magic, a regular weapon became an enchanted weapon. Its power, bullet speed, accuracy, and range were all optimal. No amount of wind would matter. The guns also became easier to handle and maintain. Calamity Mary withdrew one of them for her 4-dimensional back. It was the Dragunov, a sniper rifle. Why do you say Welfel? What does that mean? Her brain's a bit discombobulated lately, I'm afraid. A sniper rifle, or Wevel, if you want to pronounce it that way. Developed by Soviet Russia. While its slim design made it easier to transport, the extra kick made it more difficult to actually use. But none of this mattered to someone with her powers. Calamity Mary held the rifle lazily and squeezed the trigger. With semi-auto mode off, she fired bullet after bullet in rapid succession. But each one found its mark in a car. The Dragunov, designed for urban warfare, was sold for its ability for quick fire. An explosion, then a fiery plume. One by one, she destroyed the cars on high road. A flaming tire rolled across the road. When the vehicles erupted in flames, the ones behind them slammed into the blazing wreckage, and so did the ones behind them. The Dragunov picked off the vehicles lucky enough to escape the pileup. The night road was as bright as day. One man managed to stop his car and jump out in a panic, and she shot him for sport. She thought his guts would explode all over the asphalt, but the truth was far harsher. He didn't just explode, he was erased. Everything above the kneecaps gone without a trace. A sniper rifle was too powerful as an anti-personnel weapon. It was no fun. Cars were better a game than people, and magical girls were even better. If she took Ripple on directly, Top Speed would interfere, and if Top Speed fled at full speed, Mary would have no way to catch up. If she wanted to fight Ripple, she had to give her a reason. A noble do-gooder would show up to defeat the evil woman destroying her city and its innocent civilians. Angering Ripple also made her angry. Her happy, I'm sorry. Angering Ripple also made her happy. 2 birds, 1 stone. 2 birds, 1 kiss, as we like to say. Or smooch. Yeah, that's what we like to say. After she'd slaughtered Ripple, the town would be crawling with people looking for help. The perfect chance to earn candy. Calamity Mary pulled the trigger until the magazine was empty, destroying everything on the highway. This was all because of one mistake. If Ripple had just bowed her head the first time they met, she would have killed her, and that would have been the end of it. But she hadn't, and now Calamity Mary was obsessed. It was all Ripple's fault. Calamity Mary could not abide by those who did not fear her. I'm just curious what our next picture is. Oh, it's not for some time. Alright. Okay. Chapter 6, Magical Cannon Girl. A magical phone displayed the flaming highway. This is bad. We have to help.
I'll follow you, Snow White.
Right. Let's go together.
A magic phone displayed the flaming highway.
What do we do? We have to help.
Let the other magical girls handle this.
Huh? But...
We'll attack anyone who tries to help. Tama, Meadow, hurry and get ready.
Huh?
A magical phone displayed the flaming highway.
What's this? Master, you're not going, Pone? You should be able to have lots of fun if you do, Pone.
Perhaps.
You're hard to understand, Pone.
That's enough of that. More importantly, is it true that Winter Prison is dead? Who killed her?
You should probably consider your future and not some dead rival, Pone.
I just want to know.
The moment she spotted the figure aiming a gun at the highway, her brain exploded with rage. Springing off the broomstick, she dived. Top Speed shouted something, but she couldn't hear it.
Took you long enough, little girl.
Discarding the rifle, Calamity Mary pulled the pistol from her hip holster and aimed at Ripple as she landed. Silhouetted against the flames of the highway, her eyes were unreadable in the shadows, but her mouth was another story. White teeth flashed in the darkness. A bullet shot from the pistol. Holding her blade in typical ninja fashion, Ripple deflected it into the sky. Calamity Mary fired again, but she repelled that as well. Boiling rage had completely replaced her fear of the firearm. Calamity Mary pulled out another pistol with her left hand. With dual weapons, she unleashed a barrage of bullets. They all zipped past Ripple, or maybe it was more accurate to say she dodged them. The slugs were heavy and fast, but she could read their trajectory, and in her hands a sword was faster. Tossing away her pistols, Calamity Mary struck her hands into the bag hanging from her hip. Stuck her hands into the bag hanging from her hip. Ripple dashed forward and slashed as she passed, aiming for the carotid artery. Sparks flew. Her blade screeched against something steel. Ripple turned around and adjusted her stance. Underneath her armpit, Calamity Mary was holding an automatic rifle, about a yard long, with a foot-long bayonet. That was what her blade had struck.
I guess a Tokarev isn't enough to take out a little girl of your caliber.
Ripple leaped and slashed at her side, but the bayonet rebuffed her blade again. She'd been able to cut through road signs and masses of concrete with no problem, but Calamity Mary's bayonet was a different story. Was she also reinforcing it with magic?
So what if she is?
Tensing her legs, Ripple swung at her torso with all the speed she could muster. Blocked. She shifted her weight and followed up with a stab. Blocked again. Jumping back, she threw 3 shuriken, but the bayonet denied them all. She feinted to the side and slipped in close to her opponent's breast. The moment she tried to stab between her ribs, she felt intense heat on her face and sailed backward. The butt of the automatic rifle had connected with her face. She rolled to avoid the subsequent fire and, blood streaming from her nose, adjusted her stance again to close the gap quickly. It was about 30 feet to her target. She traced an arc to the right. 1, 2, 3 steps. Then a distinctive click came from the below. Ripple froze. Upon close inspection, the concrete block under her foot was slightly sunken. As she realized exactly what she'd step on, a chill ran up her spine.
Yeah!
Calamity Mary burst into laughter.
Go ahead and move your...
Hang on, we need some water.
Go ahead and move your foot, little girl. You'll be in everyone's way if you stand there forever. Die and take a landmine with you.
The automatic rifle spit a burst of flame. Ripple couldn't lift her right foot or the mine would explode. No normal anti-personnel weapon could hurt a magical girl. But this was a magical trap set by Calamity Mary. Ripple could no longer move, but bullets rushed at her just the same. She drew the weapon hidden up her sleeve, a ninja blade, half the size of her regular one. About the size of a short samurai sword, but much better suited to blocking than a full-length blade. Using both swords, she deflected the hail of bullets. Eventually, the automatic rifle ran out of ammo before it could fatally wound her. Calamity Mary pulled the trigger, but only clicks came out. She chucked the automatic rifle aside.
Do not go against me.
She shoved her hand into the bag again and pulled out 8 items.
Do not give me trouble.
Attached to each dark green spheroid was a pin. Calamity Mary hooked her finger around it, pulled and tossed the object at Ripple.
Do not piss me off.
Calamity Mary flipped over the railing. A fall from the roof of a building was no problem for a magical girl, but for Ripple there was no escape. If she moved her foot, the mine would go off, but if she waited, the grenades would explode. The air boomed. Something slammed into her, and suddenly she was being pulled through the air. The impact to her side was enough to break her hip, or so it felt. Flames licked at her hair, singeing the ends. Ripple soared through the sky, leaving behind 8 grenades and 1 landmine.
Enough with the crazy stunts!
Ripple twisted herself to see the person holding her up. And there was Topspeed, angrier than a hornet's nest. Or was that Topspeed saying that? I'm not sure. It's probably Topspeed. Oh well. She'd flown as fast as she could, nabbing Ripple from the side, just before the grenades exploded. This simultaneously removed Ripple's foot from the mine and set it off, but Rapid Swallow was faster than the explosion. In the end, Ripple had escaped with only a few scorched hairs. Ripple grabbed Topspeed's shoulder, flipped onto the broomstick, and plopped into the rear seat. That moment, she spotted the brilliant crescent moon in the night sky. Her mind flashed back to Calamity Mary's smile, glinting white, and she ground her teeth in frustration. We have to get rid of her.
Don't talk like a gangster, yo. We should withdraw.
Do you know why she was terrorizing the highway? Because she wanted to make me mad. Because she knows I care for this town. She'll continue to hunt here until I die or something stops her. She took a breath. Why did Ripple want to fight? Because she was angry, pissed. When Ripple had been Kano Sazanami, most of her motivation had come from anger. Why was she angry now? Was it because of Calamity Mary? Ripple had always thought the laid-back nature of Nakiato clashed with her own personality, but just thinking about what happened to her town made her insides boil. I don't want to save the world, and I don't even think I can, but I want to be a magical girl if I turn tail and ran from the people of Nakiato, even passing strangers. Ripple squeezed her arm around Topspeed's waist. The heroine she'd idealized long ago surfaced in her mind. I am a magical girl. Topspeed seemed to be at a loss for words. After a while, she let out a breath. This wasn't a sigh or simple exhalation, though. Oh, yeah? She dipped her chin and pulled down the edge of her triangle hat.
Well, aren't you proud of yourself?
The broomstick slowed until it finally stopped.
Never seen you talk so much before,
she said, grinning wryly.
But you missed something.
She spun 180 degrees in the air. Ripple held tightly to Topspeed's waist to keep it from falling off, but Topspeed didn't sway in the slightest.
I'm a magical girl too, you know.
Boosters extended from either side of the broomstick. Flames ignited within, and they took off like a rocket. The loud flapping of Topspeed's coat in the wind, and their own screeching through the air, threatened to destroy Ripple's ears. Not even the sound of the streamlined windshield cutting through the air could catch up. Atop the broom, the girls lay as low as possible to hide behind the barrier. Scooper's looking really cute over here. What are you doing, buddy? He's so goofy. Thanks to her magically enhanced eyes, Ripple spotted the hotel priestess. The roof was gone without a trace, exposing the top floor. Smoke rose from fires here and there. Steel beams jutted out at every angle, and debris covered the floor. She prayed no one had been staying there. But the scent of her enemy erased all noble prayers from her mind and sent her rage into overdrive. There she stood against one of the ruined hotel walls, watching them. Calamity Mary. Dual-wielding automatic rifles, she opened fire in their direction. Ripple's magically enhanced eyes could pinpoint each bullet as it traveled through the air, but most of them ended up ricocheting off the windshield. The few that didn't missed by a wide margin and disappeared behind them. Rapid Swallow's windshield possessed formidable strength, able to withstand even supersonic speeds. Calamity Mary seemed to shout something, but the wind carried her voice away, so Ripple had no idea what it was. The broom made a beeline for Calamity Mary. It broke through walls and ripped up the floor. The shockwave behind them crossed the entire floor, picking up flames, smoke, carpets, beds, and heavy chunks of rubble in its wake. 6 miles away from the hotel, they turned. Then the sound caught up with them, and the mountain of rubble collected by the shockwave dropped out of the sky. A great eye-shaped scar was now carved across the entire top floor of the hotel. Ripple saw everything. Calamity Mary had escaped. She had shot at them until the very last second, but when her bullets couldn't harm Rapid Swallow's armor, she turned to the side and dived into the pile of rubble. Heavy, sticky bloodlust, blacker than night, coiled around the hotel. It was so thick they could almost see it. The pile of rubble collapsed, and a silhouette rose from the debris.
She's alive.
Looks like. All right, I'm going in for another pass, damn it. Hold on tight.
Top Speed reignited the boosters, and the armored broomstick rocketed toward Calamity Mary on the hotel. Calamity Mary reached into her bag and pulled out a gun. This was no pistol, nor an automatic rifle. Was it a sniper rifle? The barrel was long, about 3 feet by itself, maybe a little over 4 feet in total. She still has more? Calamity Mary aimed at them, and her lips twisted. She was smiling. A shiver ran up Ripple's spine, just like when she'd stepped onto the landmine.
Dodge!
Or was that Ripple? That was Ripple.
Dodge!
She shouted and lunged forward, grabbing Top Speed's triangle hat and shoving her down with all her might. Rapid Swallow's trajectory jerked to the lower right. The boosters reversed, pumping flame in the opposite direction, but it was too late. They smashed through the hotel wall and floor, and the sudden change in momentum sent them weaving back and forth like a squirming snake until they landed on an office building a few miles away. The office building was around the same height as Hotel Priestess, and they hadn't so much landed as crashed straight through the roof and destroyed it. Shattered concrete flew everywhere, and clouds of fine glass hung in the air.
What the hell was that for?
Wait, it's Top Speed.
What the hell was that for?
Top Speed's anger was natural, but Ripple pointed at the top of the windshield. Look.
Huh?
The upper section of the windshield was twisted and ripped away. Thousands of bullets and pieces of concrete traveling at supersonic speeds hadn't even scratched it, but now it was beyond repair.
What happened?
That last bullet grazed it. Top Speed hadn't seen it because Ripple had shoved her head down. The bullet from Calamity Mary's sniper rifle should have hit the windshield dead on, but since they had dodged out of the way, it only grazed the top. Yet that was all it took to rip their protection from the broomstick. A direct hit would have ripped through both of the girls.
How? Her little pea shooter wasn't even scratching it earlier.
She changed guns. That last bullet was clearly faster than the rest. If they hadn't changed direction before she pulled the trigger, they would never have been able to dodge it. It would have scored a bullseye, blowing them to smithereens. Top Speed used Rapid Swallow to stand. Dusting herself off, she placed her triangle hat back on her head and glared angrily toward Hotel Priestess.
Damn it! Let's go in for another run!
If we do the same thing, she'll just shoot us down and kill us.
So what do we do? I can't do anything except attack head on.
That's all I can do, too.
Then what?
Ripple's direct assault on Calamity Mary had nearly gotten her blown up. Top Speed's direct assault had nearly gotten them shot out of the sky. One-on-one, they stood no chance against her. Luck was the only reason they were alive. If they repeated their approach, they'd certainly die this time. Next time.
Next time?
We should take her head on anyway.
Yeah.
Need some water. Calamity Mary's magic was the ability to imbue weapons with power. So she could not create weapons from nothing. She required pre-made weapons to work her magic. The Dragunov, the Tokarev, the AK, and this KSVK anti-material sniper rifle, all of Russian or Soviet Russian made, created an odd contrast with her Wild West gunslinger motif, however. She would have liked to use only American models, but the South American drug cartel sold mainly black market models. She hadn't exactly been overjoyed when she'd first received them, but now she loved each and every one. Calamity Mary slid her tongue along the muzzle brake. It tasted of iron. Yummy. The shot from the KSVK had only grazed the enemy. A narrow miss, but they must have sustained some damage regardless. Even through her rage, she knew her baby's firepower. Ripple and Top Speed must have learned by now that challenging her head-on without a plan would only lead to their deaths. So what would they do next? People who couldn't win one-on-one usually relied on the advantage of numbers. Most likely, Top Speed would come from the front. But after witnessing the power of the KSVK, she would charge without much speed or power. That would just be the distraction. Ripple would strike from the left, the right, or behind, some angle different from Top Speed's. That would be the real attack. If she could predict that, she could deal with them. The wide roof was no longer flat. Her battlefield was now covered in rubble. Setting traps was a simple matter. She had plenty of time earlier after Top Speed's rescue. There was no way for Ripple to come straight at Calamity Mary, regardless of the direction she chose. She laid down piano wire around the roof, and even set up a trap with wire and stun grenades in the room below. If the worst happened and she decided to attack from below, it'd be no problem at all. Ripple's only opening was from above, but she couldn't fly. Without Top Speed's help, it would be impossible. And if Top Speed helped her, they couldn't try the pincer attack. She'd easily vaporize them with her KSVK. 70 degrees to her right, a window broke in the 5-story building. A department store, if memory served, and something large crept out. Calamity Mary had of course noticed. Her senses heightened and attention focused, but she was also confused. Thing was the only word she could use to describe whatever had climbed out. Seeing it, she couldn't tell what it was. By the time she realized the black 15-square-foot wall was a fire door, she'd pull the trigger. The fire door blew away, and the flying broomstick lurking behind it zoomed off into the building's shadow. What was that? The fire door, most likely from the inside of the department store, had been mounted on the front of the broomstick. They seemed to be using it as a shield or screen of some kind, but would it do any good? Another fire door popped up in a different window and headed straight for her. Calamity Mary licked her lips, though they weren't dry. In fact, they were glistened with moisture. The moment her tongue poked out of her mouth, saliva dripped from the corner of her lips. She did nothing to stop it. The fire door was heading straight for her. Last time, she'd been confused and had not shot without thinking, but this time was different. She'd fire once she had a clear view of the target.
Come on, little girl. Come from whatever direction you want. Then, die!
The bullet hit the instant she pulled the trigger. The speed of the bullet far surpassed any magical girl's reflexes. She couldn't have dodged. The fire door shattered and fell to the ground below. Glee spread across Calamity Mary's face. Then her expression twisted. Not with joy, with bewilderment. The door had exploded, but there was no sorry. The door had exploded, but there was no corpse. Not even the remains of the broomstick. There was nothing but the fire door. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up. She could sense a piercing intent to kill. Tossing aside the KSVK, she pulled the Tokarev from its holster. She'd already calculated every possible route of attack in case of a diversion. Left, right, behind, and below. Even if she was caught unawares, her quick shooting would handle the rest. She pointed the Tokarev toward the murderous aura she'd sensed above her. The crescent moon, the starry sky. Wait, were there that many stars before? Not in the middle of town, at least. Flying toward her were thousands of... shuriken? No, too many. The projectiles glittering under the moonlight were not shuriken, but shards of glass. These buildings were full of it. High above, Topspeed and Ripple gazed down at her from above the broomstick.
Damn them!
She squeezed 3 shots off, but couldn't manage a 4th. Wait, that was that was Calamity Mary, not Topspeed.
Damn them!
She squeezed 3 shots off, but couldn't manage a 4th. She swiped at the shards with her pistol, and that was it. Glass pierced her shoulder and lower neck, and spinning shuriken ripped through her flesh. A knife sank deep into her forehead and through her back, bending her whole body backward.
Don't look down on me!
Calamity Mary thought just before she died. I'm sorry. Calamity Mary toppled back, her body riddled with shuriken, knives, and shards of glass. Her 10-gallon hat floated through the air, landing on its owner's breast. Ripple let out the breast she'd been holding. Pain spread like fire throughout her body. She hadn't had the time to feel it before, but now it hit her full force. She couldn't feel her consciousness. She could feel her consciousness fading. The fire doors had been Ripple's work. By throwing them with her magic, she knew they were sure to fly in a straight line toward Calamity Mary. From the front, the second had looked the same as the first. The point was to make Calamity Mary think Ripple was still using the door as a shield. The moment the violent gunslinger shot at the door, it created an opening for Topspeed and Ripple to attack from Rapid Swallow above. Once she saw the corner of her eye that Calamity Mary had de-transformed, Ripple collapsed. It felt like she might stop breathing altogether.
Nice job, partner.
She raised her head. There was Topspeed extending her right hand to Ripple as she gasped on the ground. She grabbed it.
You look like someone used you for target practice. Everything okay?
Somehow. She pulled the other girl's hand, but for some reason Topspeed collapsed onto her, and Ripple ended up supporting her instead. Before she could ask what was wrong, she noticed the silhouette behind Topspeed. There stood a girl, about high school age, supporting a white school swimsuit and wielding a giant pole-arm hatchet hybrid. The ridiculous outfit and obviously aggressive stance made her intentions clear. Ripple rolled, still holding Topspeed. The massive weapon cut through the floor like a hot knife through butter and scooped up after her. However, Ripple had already sprung into a crouch and whipped out her sword. She parried and the weapon skipped away to the side. She followed with an immediate slash back at the wielder's left thigh and right wrist. She should have seriously wounded her, but the girl hardly reacted and continued to swing her weapon as if she didn't notice. Ripple retreated a step. Not a drop of blood appeared where she'd struck.
Magic?
Dodging a swipe along the ground, Ripple drew her short sword and hurled it. The sword nailed the girl's foot to the hotel floor, but then she slipped right out. Still no blood. In fact, she didn't seem to be wounded at all. She attacked like a bladed whirlwind, striking with pinpoint accuracy at her enemy's vitals. The girl wasn't even trying to dodge. Direct hits had no impact. Everything felt like whiffs. Her opponent's attacks were heavy and simple. Ripple had no trouble dodging them, but none of her own attacks were finding purchase. The swimsuit-clad girl retreated, as if realizing they were at a stalemate, and the giant weapon vanished. Then she sank into the hotel floor, first her ankles, then her calves, thighs, and hips, until even her head had vanished. Ripple clicked her tongue. Hang on.
Graby! Graby! Hey! Hey!
Okay. Sorry. Scratching the couch. Her attacks hadn't missed. They'd passed through her. The girl was definitely using some kind of magic, and as long as she couldn't get around that, Ripple could never win with her abilities. As the futility of the situation sank in. Exhaustion settled heavily on her shoulders. There was nothing to gain from fighting anymore. They'd simply lose. If the girl had retreated, that was fine, but that was an optimistic assumption. It was smarter to assume she was hiding, waiting to strike again, and she had to act accordingly. Ripple spun around to grab top speed and beat a hasty retreat. Suddenly, she stopped. The one lying face down on the floor was supposed to be top speed. There she was, with her coat declaring no gratuitous opinions, draped across her like a blanket. But the girl wasn't top speed. The coat was there, but the triangle hat and witch clothes were gone. Staggering, Ripple made her way over and kneeled next to the human lying there. She appeared to be in her late teens with braided chestnut hair. A deep wound crossed from her shoulder to her breast, the worst of the bleeding already past. Her eyes were closed, and her expression was so peaceful she might have been sleeping. Ripple took the girl's hand in her shaking one. It was cold. The girl was wearing a maternity dress. Her belly was quite large. Topspeed had always said she needed 6 more months to live. Ripple bit her lip hard. The taste of iron filled her mouth, and blood dripped out, but she didn't realize the pressure. Her words echoed endlessly, deep in Ripple's heart. Why? That night, Ripple lost her one and only friend. The moment the angel descended, Snow White breathed a sigh of relief. Even in these extraordinary circumstances that forced them to fight one another, magical girls rushed to help when disaster struck, regardless of faction. That was how magical girls should be. That was what this was all about. The Peaky Angels had attacked her in La Pucelle on the steel tower in Kubagahame, and she still remembered them with fear. But if this one wanted to help save lives, then she had to forget the past and assist her. She had to be careful to keep her smile natural, so as to not put her on guard. As she welcomed the newcomer with the warmest smile she could muster, Hardgoralis tackled her and sent her rolling across the pavement. Surprised and confused, she stood up and frantically tried to piece together what had happened, only to find Hardgoralis already in heated battle with the angel. The angel's expression was not normal. Her lips formed a thin line, her face was pale, her brows were knit, and she was moaning. Hardgoralis hurled her plush animal onto the road, unceremoniously yanked a traffic sign out of the ground and raised it above her head and swung. The angel maintained her distance. "What's going on?" Snow White wondered. A giant pileup had occurred on the highway, and the casualties were sure to be great. There was so much for the magical girls to do, yet the angel had attacked her without a thought to the flaming vehicles, the toppled truck, and the countless injured. Snow White quivered with anger, not fear. She was indignant that this girl could be so selfish, and think nothing of others' lives. Her magic let her read the minds of people in trouble to figure out what was wrong, and she could hear countless voices. She knew exactly where each one was, too. It was unbelievable that someone with their powers could just ignore them to fight. Maybe she was the only one who could hear, but it was obvious that people needed help. Could they not see, or did they not care? The voices in her head were increasing and intensifying. Suddenly, Snow White noticed something. A strange voice was mixed among the cries for help. Oh no, what do I do? The source was 30 feet behind her. She looked, but there was no one there. Swim said not to attack them, but shouldn't I be helping with the accident? Still, Swim did say... Maybe I should just take her out, then go help. Is someone there? Huh? Can she see me? That's not good. How could she see me? Are you a magical girl, too? The voice stopped. Sorry, she found me! A dog-eared girl suddenly appeared out of nowhere. What are you doing? The plan was for me to act as a distraction while you took her out. You let her find you, idiot, stupid dog, useless. I can't not think of courage hearing stupid dog. We should watch more of Courage, because we didn't really watch much of that show as a kid. The angel lashed out, frantically dodging the road sign.
If you're not going to use it, then give it to me,
she spat. She spiraled through the air, snatched a transparent cloak from the other girl, tossed it over herself, and disappeared. The dog-eared girl watched her go with tears in her eyes. Snow White and Hardcore Alice, still brandishing the road sign, turned to face her, and she let out a noise that was part shout, part scream, and part cry. She swiped at the ground below her, and a hole a few feet wide opened up below. She dropped into it and disappeared. Hardcore Alice had served as both her reinforcements and her savior that night. The angel was gone, and the dog-eared girl had turned tail. Snow White limply dropped her raised fist.
Let's go help some people, even if it's just us.
Yes, understood. Hardcore Alice set off in search of her rabbit plush, found it in the shadow of some rubble, and picked it up. With her rabbit in her right hand, and the street sign slung across her shoulder, she followed after Snow White. She shut off the TV. The accident on National Route X showed how gruesome things had truly become, but she felt no urge to rush over. Oh yeah, suicide trigger warning coming up in a second. Just a heads up. Yeah. If she went, she could do many things to help, but there was nothing she wanted to do. Sister Nana Habite, or we pronounce that Habutai, hadn't moved from her bed since she had fled Okatsuji. Shizuku Ashu, Vice Winter Prison. Still on her belly, Nana moved only her face to the side. In front of her was the corkboard displaying the smiling photos of Sister Nana in Winter Prison, of Nana Habutai, and Shizuku Ashu. Shizuku had always been so kind. Cleaning, laundry, she did it all. She'd helped Nana with a report for university, and even called her cute. Nana knew her outward appearance was only temporary. People had always called her cute to make fun of her, or to express some sense of superiority, but never had anyone truly meant it. But Winter Prison wasn't like them. Whatever it was she'd liked about Nana, her claims that it was love didn't seem fake, at least. Maybe she just had bad taste. Sister Nana had the ability to draw out the power of other magical girls. With her magic, Winter Prison became stronger. She cared about Nana quite a bit, but how did Nana feel? No, Nana didn't return the feeling. She loved Winter Prison. She'd loved her, but not really cared about her. After all, she'd led her to her death. She was a siren leading her to danger. Winter Prison. No matter how many times she thought about it, she arrived at the same conclusion. She was tired of thinking. Had it been hours, or had it been days? Her sense of time was long gone, and she couldn't tell. Nana got up from the bed. Her joints groaned. Nana was neither kind nor pure. She was conniving when it came to getting what she wanted, and only ever acted with her own best interests in mind. I think I skipped. Hang on. She was neither kind nor pure, but wanted to be seen as such by others, by Winter Prison, by her dream prince. The long scarf hanging from the chair must have been Shizuku's. She doubted it was part of Winter Prison's magical girl outfit. Nana picked up the scarf and chair. If she told Winter Prison that she wanted to die as a kind, pure heroine while protecting her prince, what would she have thought? Examining herself now, she could only conclude that was what she had wished for. A sense of loss overtook her sadness. Placing the chair under the curtain rail, she stood on top of it. She tied the scarf to the rail, then formed a loop. She had failed to become the heroine who died to save her prince. She could have become a heroine that avenged her prince. If she teamed up with Snow White and Hardcore Alice, she could have magnified their power to assist the suffering people in that giant pileup. But she didn't care. She slipped the looped scarf around her neck. She'd failed to save her prince and die, and she didn't want to fight to avenge her prince. The only option left was to follow her prince in death. Had Winter Prison realized Sister Nana's feelings? She'd probably foreseen that Sister Nana would abandon her to escape. Yet still she'd fought and died to protect her. Sister Nana could never do the same. And with that impassable rift between them weighing on her mind, Nana kicked the chair out from under her. Okay, suicide warning over. Sorry about that. I mean, it's not really, I don't think, problematic with what they did, but it is hard to read, so yeah. Anyway, I definitely hope I finish the book, because it does, I feel, have a very strong message of hope in the end. Okay. Chapter 5. Fav. Fav always makes everything better. I mean, he makes everything worse in the story, but he just makes everything, more fun, just as, an audience. I mean, for us, as an audience, if that makes sense.
So, about this week's cuts, Pone. There are a lot more than usual, Pone. Please pay attention so you don't miss any, Pone. Vice Winter Prison, Calamity Mary, Sister Nana, Top Speed, Unile. The above have all been cut, Pone. The remaining magical girls are Swim Swim, Snow White. Excuse me, hang on. Tama, Hardcore Alice, Meadow, Musician of the Forest, Cranberry, Ripple. 7 in total. Oh, we did it! We're finally below the initial proposed 8 girls. Wonderful, Pone. But, unfortunately, this isn't the end, Pone. Those items you all received have depleted our stores of mana again, Pone. My, what a miscalculation, Pone. So Fav must apologize to all of you. But the limit of 8 is now down to 4, Pone.
Whoopsie daisy.
Do your best to earn candy until there are only 4 left, Pone. Fav knows you all have what it takes to survive, Pone. Well, goodbye.
Ooh, the next picture is coming up. Maybe I'll actually display it right now. Here I go. Is that... Oh, it's upside down. We actually forgot to rotate some images, so we had to rotate some in Streamlabs, but we weren't sure if this one was upside down or not. But seeing it now in the book. Oh, it's also it's also supposed to be flipped the other way. Hang on. Wait, I'm hitting the wrong thing. I think I just centered an image. Oh no, I did. 1 second, sorry. Okay, so there we go. Okay. Now it's exactly what it looks like in the book. Okay. Chapter 7, Cranberry's Secret. The chaos of Calamity Mary's attack was ultimately explained as an act of terrorism. No groups claimed responsibility for it, but it was the only justification the world might accept. Snow White and Hardcore Alice worked themselves to the bone helping people, leaving far more than a few witnesses. Additionally, the many weapons Calamity Mary had left behind lent credence to the terrorism story. No one, at least publicly, suspected a magical girl to be the perpetrator, partly because no one could imagine a lovely girl with superpowers as a gun-wielding soldier. Their existence was hardly public knowledge, despite the number of witness reports. Of course, the syndicate that had supported Calamity Mary knew who was behind the attack, but they kept silent. Most likely, they didn't spare a thought for what a magical girl was supposed to be. They were just relieved to be free of the nuke waiting to go off.
My, what an exhausting morning, Pone.
The white section of the sphere's body was dull, and the butterfly wing beat weakly. At least so it seemed.
They're calling it a scam, a hoax, fraud, lies. and all sorts of things, Pum. Maybe it was too much to hope they'd believe we had to cut down to 4 just because we added the items, Pum.
If they don't believe you, then so be it.
Master,
Yes?
you don't think it's okay for Fob to suffer just because it's Fob, do you, Pum? Oh, wait. Let me try that again. You don't think it's okay for Fob to suffer just because it's Fob, do you, Pum?
It's your job to be hated. Lying on the bed, Cranberry put a hand to her cheek. So please, let them hate you. I have a lot to think about in the meantime. Several of their number had already died. Meow. Nemarine, Ruler, La Pucelle, Magicaloid 44, Vice Winter Prison, Sister Nana, Unile, Calamity Mary, and Topspeed. It was a shame she wouldn't get a rematch against Winter Prison. She'd been so sure Winter Prison would be the last one alive. The game had passed its halfway point, and the most qualified contender, Winter Prison, was out. Of those left, maybe Swim Swim or Ripple were most capable, or perhaps Hardcore Alice. Cranberry preferred interesting opponents.
Oh, one more thing.
What is it?
Fob was going to make a progress report. Did you have anything specific to add, Pum?
The Magical Kingdom would periodically hold selection tests in order to find new blood. Capable candidates were chosen to compete, and one would be chosen to join their ranks. As per custom, selection test curators were called masters. After the Magical Kingdom dispatched the necessary members, they would adopt the role of advisor and seek out humans from the land the test was being held in, offer words of wisdom, and keep the test proceeding smoothly. Without a master to handle this role, the selection test could not take place. The special phones provided to masters came pre-installed with various applications not found on normal magical phones in order to make the test as smooth as possible. Fav, who resided inside this supervisor phone, would obtain whatever items the master required. Fav was also an impish creature, and many of the apps he installed were alarming. Fill out the report as you see fit.
Yes.
Cranberry wondered if Fav would actually do as he said. The idea was to convince the Magical Kingdom that they were carrying out a perfectly normal personnel training session. It had to present their bloodstained death match as a test of peaceful goody-two-shoes girls. The Magical Kingdom sought talented individuals, but they would not accept applicant deaths in the name of this pursuit. They claimed it was wrong to disrupt other realms for their own gain. Of all the idiotic ideas, Cranberry spat. Reaching out to other realms for talent was a disruption in and of itself. All that crap about making the least possible disturbance was just their hubris talking. If they were going to come in and throw things out of balance anyway, then they might as well use everything at their disposal to achieve their goal. If they wanted talent, then they needed to purge the weak and pick from the strong. An accident had occurred during the selection test that had made Cranberry a resident of the Magical Kingdom. One of the applicants had attempted to summon a demon in a basement, and it went berserk. By the time she had subdued the demon, it had killed everyone except Cranberry. Her fellow applicants, the supervisor who stepped in to help, 12 casualties in total. A great tragedy. One by one, her classmates had been crushed, melted, mashed, and broken. Cranberry had been 9 at the time, so it was a shocking experience for her, but the joy she'd experienced was even greater. Trading blows with violence incarnate, drooling with the elation of slaughter, firing off magic. Then, when they were both at wit's end, emerging dominant over her opponent. Truly, that was the definition of a warrior of justice. In defeating powerful enemies, she found catharsis. The demon purged, she'd stood there intoxicated. Ecstasy coursed through every fiber of her being. She bathed in the joy of overflowing blood, until a hologram rose up from the supervisor's phone and asked,
How long are you going to keep standing there, Pum?
The real shock came when she heard it had all been because of an accident. The true selection process seemed so tepid, exasperating, and boring. The failures would laugh with embarrassment, and everyone would celebrate the winner together. But that wasn't how it should be, she thought. It was all wrong. They should be stealing irreplaceable treasures from one another, killing, being killed, and only by surviving to the end did the winner get chosen. That was how things should be. When she told Fav this, he had answered,
"Then you should become a master, Poem."
Taking his advice, she did just that. Fav admitted he was bored with the current system and eagerly looked forward to a more entertaining selection test under Cranberry's supervision. She wondered if something inside her had broken during the accident, but it was of no concern to her. As a master, she could conduct the game as she saw fit. As long as the magical kingdom never caught wind, she could do as she pleased. I just wish I could have enjoyed this as a participant. Come on, can't I get an invitation? She muttered to herself. Okay, switching POV, so I'll take the image down now. It is a good one, though. I'm a little biased. Swim pondered the situation. The number of magical girls had been reduced to 7, yet they were given another quota. In order to ensure everyone in her group survived, 3 other girls would need to drop out of the race. Tama had come scurrying back after her skirmish with Snow White and Hardcore Alice, but Meadow was still missing. She didn't seem to be dead, though. Their ambush had failed because even though Meadow had successfully distracted the enemy, Tama had been discovered while wearing the invisibility cloak. It must have been the work of magic. The magic that let its user find people. That made the invisibility cloak utterly useless. It also meant Tama couldn't hide in a hole for a surprise attack, and if Swim died beneath the ground, she'd be found anyway. Snow White might even be able to sniff out Meadow while she was transformed into an object. Ambushes have been extremely effective against people who believed in chivalry and fair rights, but Ruler had never cared for those things, so neither had Swim. But if Snow White could sense them, that was that. It was a bad matchup. In other words, they should avoid a battle with Snow White. Hardcore Alice seemed to be acting together with her, so they should stay away from her too. What about Ripple? She had taken care of Top Speed by attacking from behind, but she'd had to let Ripple go after a head-on clash. The battle between Calamity Mary and Ripple had told Swim that Ripple far outclassed her in reaction speed, agility, and quick thinking. This was why their fight had ended in a stalemate, even though Swim had rendered all of Ripple's attacks useless. Tama and Meadow could run and fly faster than Swim, but in battle they were no quicker than her. Swim might be safe, but they would most likely get killed before they could get an attack off. A successful ambush would mean victory, but if they failed, the damage would be enormous. If she went after Ripple, it would be best to go alone. The only one left was the musician of the forest, Cranberry. There was no information on her. And Mystery was a sign there was greater danger lurking in the shadows. But the reason she had no information on her was because Cranberry had abstained from fighting, had never even run into another magical girl by chance. If she was confident in her skills, would she have shown up for Calamity Mary's attack on National Route X? Her name, Musician of the Forest, also made it seem like she wasn't a fighter. Compared to Snow White, who couldn't be ambushed, and Ripple, who was too fast to surprise, she seemed easiest to deal with. They'd saved the energy pills because they had so few of them, but now seemed like a good time to test their effects. If they worked well, they would be useful in the fight against Ripple. Tama was kneeling on the wooden floor, looking depressed, and Meadow still hadn't come back. Unil's loss had hurt, but the remaining 3 had still made it into the final 8. Ruler would have kept them all alive, even once the limit had dropped to 4. Swim mulled over what Ruler would and wouldn't have done. The sound of a door opening broke her concentration. There was Meadow. She was panting, just like when Winter Prison had killed Meadow. Thomas screamed, but Meadow ignored her.
I know someone we can kill. We won't fail this time.
Behind the back alleys of the Kubakahama Street, lined with fishing supply shops, was a long stone staircase. During the day, it was a playground for children and cats. I added the cats. But at night, there was not a single street lamp. Even the light from the stores that opened early and closed late couldn't reach that far. No one was foolish enough to climb those long stairs with only moon and starlight to rely on, so the area was naturally empty at night, except for cats. I mean, except for magical girls. Meow. Snow White sat on the first stone step, staring at the pebbles at her feet. The incident on the highway had been no accident. It was obvious from the giant holes, exploded vehicles, and people reduced to simply feet that it wasn't a normal pileup. She had been too busy prying open car doors, lifting rubble off people, and carrying the victims to ambulances to even stop to think. But now that she did, she felt more and more that it could have only been the work of a being like her. She was disappointed in her comrades who'd ignored people in need to fight instead. But she despaired that some had purposefully hurt and killed civilians. And now they needed to reduce their numbers to 4, not 8. After letting her emotions take over and screaming at Fav, there was nothing left in her. Not anger, not fear, nothing. Only weariness and exhaustion. She'd spent her whole life thinking magical girls were supposed to help people in need, and now Snow White's magic was for this express purpose. Sorry, he's nibbling at my legs. But maybe she was the crazy one, not everyone else. La Pucelle wasn't there anymore to cheer her up and tell her that wasn't true. Sister Nana and Winter Prison had suggested they'd band together to overcome the danger, but they were gone too. It was hilarious, really. She was like a character in an action movie trying to change it into a rom-com of her own. I don't want to do anything. The sentiment bubbled up from deep, deep within her heart. She was tired. She stopped checking the aggregate sites for magical girl sightings, grinning widely at her own section. She had just missed one day at first, which became 3, until finally she'd stopped altogether for who knows how long. I don't have to do anything, do I? She asked, hoping to hear some kind words.
Not true,
came the swift denial. There's nothing Oh wait, I'm so sorry. That was supposed to be hardcore Alice, not Fav.
Not true,
came the swift denial.
There's nothing I can do.
Not true.
There's nothing I want to do.
Not true.
Hey.
Not true.
Snow White's toe kicked the pebble she'd been staring at. The flat little stone flew straight through the air and bounced off a utility pole.
I don't want to do anything anymore!
Snow White screamed. Secretly, she was surprised she had the energy to scream. Or meow. She stood up and seized Hardcore Alice, sitting next to her by the collar, hauling her up.
There are no magical girls in this town anymore! I don't want to do any more!
Hardcore Alice's apparent indifference to what had happened infuriated her. Her eyes were dead and colorless. Dark bags dripped beneath them. Her back was straight because Snow White was holding her up, but other than that, she was the exact same as when they'd first met. So much had happened. Was she not sad or depressed at all? Snow White was mad at her, but she was also angry with herself for yelling at her. Oh wait, wrong voice.
There are still magical girls in this town.
No, there aren't. They're all gone.
Not true. They're still here.
They're gone.
Not true.
They're gone!
Snow White roughly let go, and Alice fell back onto the stone stairs. Snow White continued to shout.
La Pucelle, Sister Nana, and Winter Prison are gone! There are no magical girls left in this town! Just leave me alone!
She took the rabbit's foot from her pocket and hurled it at Hardcore Alice, then turned and ran. She could sense a presence chasing after her, but she shouted, "Don't follow me!" And it disappeared. Alone, Snow White ran off into the darkness.
Meow.
It's so funny. I almost feel like he thinks we're distressed for like yelling and stuff. We're just voice acting. It's okay. We're just reading a funny little book. Ako Harata woke to rays of sunlight peeking in through a gap in the curtains and chirping swallows. Sitting up in bed, she reached next to her pillow for the white rabbit but came up empty. Ako was often careless with it, so it constantly went missing. Thinking she would look for it later, she decided to have breakfast. Her uncle worked the night shift, so he was asleep. Her aunt had already eaten breakfast and headed out for the day. Ako spread some butter on her bread, then topped it with sweet red bean jam. She added ketchup to her fried egg and soy sauce to her cabbage salad. The bottle got jammed, so she opened the hole with a toothpick. She packed her school bag the night before, so it was ready. Her school uniform was on a hanger, hooked on the wall. She checked the mirror. Her complexion was bad, but she seemed the same as ever. Picking a piece of cabbage off her cheek, she put it in her mouth. Everything was normal as she shuffled into the crowd of students heading to school. Without any attempt to start conversation or even say hello, she blended into the mob. Snow White had flung the rabbit's foot at her, saying to leave her alone, but she couldn't. Unlike Hardcore Alice, the other girl would easily die from being beheaded or impaled. Alice needed to be by Snow White's side and protect her. If not, Snow White needed to at least hold on to the rabbit's foot for emergencies. She could ask Fauve to contact her, but Snow White would probably ignore her. In that case, she needed to look for places to find her that night. She hung her head as she walked and thought, but at the sound of her name, she looked up. That moment, she realized the name she heard was not Ako, but Hardcore Alice. A few yards in front of her stood an oddly dressed figure. Now that Ako had reacted, the figure slowly approached. She didn't seem to be heading to school or work, and she stood out in the crowd. From the shadow of her hood, I almost said her blood. From the shadow of her hood, she watched Ako. She was coming closer. Beneath the coat was a swimsuit. It seemed familiar. Her eyes reminded Ako of her father's. The one time she'd gone to visit him in prison, he'd said nothing except, "Don't ever come back." And then he'd returned to his cell. The girl's glittering eyes were the same as the ones she saw in the mirror, so perfectly like her father's. They were the eyes of a killer. She panicked. A murderer in a white school swimsuit and coat was walking toward her. There were so many people nearby. If she transformed, the other students from Ako's school would learn who she really was, and she'd lose her right to be a magical girl. In other words, she'd die. She had to find somewhere private to transform. Ako did an about-face and took a step, searching for a secluded place, when something bumped into her from behind and knocked her off balance. There was nothing to grab onto, and she clawed at the air as she pitched forward and tumbled across the ground. She heard a scream. Her back burned. She hadn't been pushed, she'd been stabbed. Blood gushed from a deep wound. Was she going to die? She needed to get away from the crowd and fast. There she could transform into Hardcore Alice, and she would heal in no time. Crawling across the asphalt, she made it a full body length before her arms stopped working. She couldn't transform. If that was the case, then she at least needed to find Snow White. The rabbit's foot in her hand trembled slightly. Koyuki had just gotten up for the day when a faint voice reached her ears. She couldn't hear the cries for help without transforming into Snow White. That rule had never been broken before. Yet now she heard a voice. It was small and weak, like it would disappear at any moment. Still in the middle of changing, Koyuki raised her head and strained her ears. The words she shouted the day before haunted her.
There are no magical girls in this town!
La Pucelle, Sister Nana, and Winter Prison were all gone. Snow White had lost all hope for her fellow heroines. Koyuki bit her lip. The voice was fading. Tossing aside the scarf she was holding, she leapt out of the window, transformed into Snow White, and threaded her way through the mass of students making their way to school. She ignored the screams and shouts, focusing only on the direction of the voice. Kicking off the ground, she dashed up a utility pole and looked down from the power lines. A crowd was gathering. That must be it. She ran across the wires and jumped down. A circle had formed in the crowd, and no one attempted to approach the girl lying in the center. She could hear the girl's voice.
Snow White.
She rushed over. The crowd was buzzing with excitement, but the only voice Snow White could hear was the girl's. It was small and weak, about to vanish, but still she heard it clearly. As she approached, something seemed off to Snow White. How did this person know her name? Why was she calling her? All became clear a moment later. Seeing the girl in white, the girl on the ground weakly extended her right hand. In it was a white ball of fluff.
I wanted to cheer you up. If you're here, if the one who saved me is here, then this town will always have one magical girl in it. That's what I wanted to say. But you ran off and I couldn't. So now...
Snow White held the girl's hand in both of hers. She was cold as death.
Snow White, please, at least take this. Rabbit's foot.
The voice faded away. Blood stained the girl's uniform, but her face was clean save for a few flecks of blood. Snow White remembered her. She was the middle schooler who'd lost her key that night months ago. She gripped her hand tightly. She'd learned her lesson after the mistake with Winter Prison. The Peaky Angels had fatally injured her, but they lost Unile in the counterattack. All because they had assumed she was dead and revealed themselves. You couldn't let your guard down for a second. Disguised, closing in, or stabbing. Gritting her teeth, Meadow shared what she'd learned from Unile's death. After snatching the invisibility cloak from Tama during the battle at National Route X, Meadow had used it to replace the white rabbit plush Hardcore Alice always carried around. After she tossed the cloak over the plush in the middle of the road, she transformed and swapped places. Hardcore Alice had picked her up and brought her home, and that was how Meadow learned her true identity and address. She carefully considered when they should strike. She learned from her mistake. She could only attack when there would be no risk of counterattack, somewhere like in the middle of a giant crowd, where her target would be unable to transform or risk exposing herself. Under her breath, Meadow muttered over and over, "We should have done this in the first place, then Unile wouldn't have to die. Wouldn't have had to die." Okay. There's just 2 chapters left. I think we can do this. I just need some water. Big boy. Big boy. Chapter 8. The Demonic Girl. Two days had passed since Hardcore Alice's death. The musician of the forest, Cranberry, had accepted their offer to meet. But her tone had been so flippant that Swim half suspected a trap. But if they could lay an ambush without being caught in one themselves, there was nothing to worry about. Each of them received 1 energy pill. The effects only lasted for 30 minutes, so they would wait for Swim's command before taking their pills and attacking Cranberry. The meeting would take place on N City's second tallest mountain after Mount Takanami, Mount Funaga. The entrance was a short ways from Kojimadai Station, following the road counterclockwise and up a hill. Unlike on Mount Takanami, there were no abandoned structures from failed development projects. There was equipment to turn it into a skiing area, and in the winter, tourists from all over came to ski and snowboard. But that was the mountain's southern side. On the northern side, there was no such thing as a tourism season. Trees and grass grew wild, untouched by man. The unpaved mountain road and various animal trails formed the only paths, such as there were. For a human, climbing the steep northern side required specialized knowledge. But for a magical girl, the ascent was a breeze. Swim Swim's chosen meeting spot was a mountain cabin halfway up Mount Funaga. Thanks to a landslide after a great storm some years ago, the cabin was now half buried in earth. No one would think to come here, no matter how eccentric or crazy they might be. Meadow and Tama moved to their places while Swim Swim waited for Cranberry inside the cabin alone. She could tell Meadow was emotionally unstable, which was making Tama uneasy too. But a leader must remain calm, and so Swim Swim was unaffected. She would need to figure out what to do if the others messed up their parts of the plan. It was already late at night. From inside the cabin, she could hear the occasional hooting of owls and the endless buzzing of insects. Tired of the moldy air inside the broken-down cabin, she stuck her head out and checked the area, but all she could see were trees and flowering plants shivering in the wind. To her powerful eyes, the mountainside at night was as clear as day, but it smelled damp compared to when they'd come during the day to scope out the place. Maybe the smell was different at night, or maybe rain clouds were approaching. Swim Swim pulled her back in and waited some more. In a corner of the cabin was a spider web with no spider. Maybe it had gotten tired of waiting and moved on. Her magical phone rang with an incoming call. She's almost here. Cranberry would be there soon, and then they would take her out 3-on-1 soon. Until then, she could only wait. Swim Swim swallowed the energy medicine. The pill was large, but it went down easily. She could feel power welling within her. What's taking so long? Did she need to wait even more? At that moment, she heard what sounded like a startled shriek or a dog being kicked. It was Tama. It was a dog being kicked. It had already begun. Swim Swim slipped into the ground with a soft splash. Musician of the forest, Cranberry, had excellent hearing, far surpassing that of the average magical girl. She noticed the flapping of angels' wings before she even set foot on the mountain, and as she hiked upward, the footsteps, breathing and wrestling, coming from her invisible stalker, were all too obvious. The invisibility cloak was a powerful item, but it had many weaknesses. If the wearer had any personal troubles, Snow White could hear them, and it was useless against someone like Cranberry, who could track an opponent just by sound. She picked up a fist-sized rock from the ground, rolled it around in her fingers, tossed it up, and caught it about 2 times, then flung it at her stalker. The rock bounced off what was supposedly air, eliciting a dog-like yelp. Something swiped at the ground, opening a hole a few feet wide. The magical girl fled into this endlessly extending tunnel. Cranberry had thrown with the intent to kill, but it seemed this one was strong enough to escape with her life. She had most likely blocked it with her arm, but she still must have sustained heavy damage and lost her desire to fight. That would explain why she fled. Creating a yard-wide hole and escaping underground, that was Tama's handiwork. Cranberry knew the extent of her abilities. Normally, her reflexes wouldn't be enough to react to a shot from Cranberry. Her reaction speed was being abnormally enhanced. Clearly, she was under the effects of the energy pills. Cranberry could hear her traveling through the ground, but made no attempt to follow. She had bigger fish to fry than a beaten dog. The flapping wings above her were gone, too. She proceeded cautiously, taking care to make her gait natural, so she didn't seem wary. She avoided the great moss-covered trees, crushed the saplings under her feet, and climbed up the ivy on the cliffs. She was getting close. Her heart pounded with just the right level of tension. She needed to account for the energy pill when attacking. Wading casually through the underbrush, she randomly plunged her right hand into a human-sized boulder, lifted it, then slammed it against the ground. The pulse she'd heard from within the boulder stopped. The boulder faded, transforming into an angel with a great hole in her chest, then a young girl. Not a bad idea to transform into an object to ambush people, but it was pointless against Cranberry. Winter Prison's killers were such petty creatures, she thought with a sigh. 5 minutes after leaving the cabin, Swim ran into Tama as she was escaping underground. I'm sorry! She just suddenly threw this rock at my arm! Now is not the time to listen and sympathize. Ordering Tama to follow behind her, Swim poked her head out of the ground and carefully searched for the enemy. Meadow could be fighting at that very moment. If they could find wherever that was, they could trap Cranberry in a pincer attack. It wasn't long before she found what looked like the remains of a fight. Several small trees were broken, more like they'd been trampled underfoot than hit in an attack. In other words, their enemy had almost definitely gone this way. As she turned to follow the trail, the ground shook. What happened? She ran, relying on sound to guide her, and came upon the corpse of a young girl. She looked just like Unile after she de-transformed, and it didn't take long for Swim to piece together the situation. Tama dropped to her knees, holding her head, but Swim grabbed her and forced her up. They couldn't grieve just yet. Ruler would have yelled at her a bit, too. Swim had opened her mouth to speak when she noticed a silhouette among the trees, 10 feet behind Tama. Colorful flowers, not native to this area, covered her. No, she was the musician of the forest, so that wasn't strange. Swim leaned close to Tama's ear and spoke softly. Cranberry is behind you. Let's attack her from both sides. She slipped beneath the ground. Swim was gone before Cranberry could attack. A wise choice. So far she'd killed 3 people, far and away the best score among the candidates. Plus, her magic was top tier compared to the others. Her ability to stay calm and efficient was also a good thing. She had an inkling before the game began that Swim might be the last one alive. Cranberry's greatest wish was to struggle and suffer against strong opponents, yet still manage to bring them to their knees. Victory would be hers, though just barely. Eliminating the powerful was in direct conflict with her goal of discovering the strongest candidate. But it was their fault for being so foolish as to challenge her without even realizing they were outmatched. If they couldn't figure out when someone could beat them, then the fools weren't worthy of being chosen. Cranberry smiled bitterly. No magical girl in End City could take her down in a fight to the death. Obviously, that included Swim as well. While at first glance her ability to pass through matter seemed unsurmountable, it did indeed have a weak point. Some things she couldn't pass through. For example, light. The fact that she was visible meant she still reflected it, and there was one more thing she couldn't pass through. Tama was approaching, moving from the shadow of one tree to another. Did she think she was hiding? Cranberry could even tell where Swim was in the ground. She couldn't eliminate the sound of her pulse, after all, and a surprisingly calm heartbeat echoed from the earth. While Tama circled around counterclockwise, Swim moved clockwise, slowly spiraling toward Cranberry. Were they going to attack at the same time? The best course of action would be to take out one of them first. Who should she prioritize? Between Tama and Swim, the latter was more of a nuisance. Swim was nearly 30 feet away, beneath the ground at a depth of maybe a foot from the surface, measuring from her head. Cranberry leapt back without warning. At the same time, the upper half of Swim Swim's body rose out of the ground, and a moment later, Tama dashed forward. A great weapon materialized in Swim Swim's hands, and she swung as Cranberry stretched out her right hand. Swim Swim could sink into the matter while she talked, which meant sound did not go through her. She could pass through neither light nor sound, so Cranberry attacked with sound. The blow ripped up the surrounding grass and sent the trees behind her flying like toothpicks. The boom slammed into Swim Swim and flung her through the air. The destructive sound wave was focused in one direction, meaning its power was particularly concentrated. It packed quite a punch. Memories of long ago surfaced. This was how she had repelled the demon in that basement. The sinister music, as soon as I mentioned the demon in the basement. The pleasure she'd felt in that moment had never left her mind. And that was precisely what drove her now. Swim Swim landed hard. She could hear bones breaking. Very fitting. Also, hello, colorful cast. For a second, she thought she'd finished her with one hit, but the pulse and breathing hadn't failed. The girl was quite sturdy. As for Tama, she seemed to be watching from the side. Cranberry decided to prioritize Swim Swim and make sure she never took another breath. Cranberry walked over to where Swim Swim lay and lifted her foot. She would crush her head and stamp out her existence, but she didn't. Swim Swim wasn't there. What lay there wasn't even a magical girl, but a young human in about first grade, possibly second. She quickly realized this was Swim Swim's pre-transformation form. She must have lost consciousness from the impact and de-transformed. Cranberry was no shining example of humanity, and she knew it. She would kill anyone, magical girl and human alike, if need be. Whether they were in elementary school, kindergarten, or even a baby, savior, lover, parent, sister, brother, she'd kill them all. Age didn't matter one bit. But for one moment, not even half of a tenth of a second, she hesitated. She loved battles and cared immensely about the strength and ability of her opponents, but gave no thought to their true forms. This had turned out to be a mistake. Cranberry wondered how such a young girl could be the rival she'd rated so highly. She paused for only a moment, but her hesitation because of her victim's youth confused her. Her mind raced. As a result, she couldn't fully dodge a blow she might otherwise have laughed off. Tama, approaching from behind, slashed into her back. In truth, only her jacket had been torn to shreds. Cranberry herself suffered nothing but minor abrasions. She wasn't even bleeding. I said breathing. She wasn't even bleeding. The marks on her skin were too slight to be called welts. Naturally, she'd sustained no damage. At least, she wouldn't have if she'd been attacked by anyone other than Tama. Cranberry knew of Tama's magic. She could dig holes. If she dug in even the slightest, it would create a yard-wide hole. The music again. This included ground, concrete, steel, even humans. She could expand any opening she dug to 3 feet wide. Regret was the first thing to pop into her head, then disbelief. Before she could think any more, Tama's magic activated. Cranberry's back twisted, then ripped apart. Her torso and head vanished. Her arms and flowers dropped to the ground. Her vines wilted, and her lower body fell back, spilling guts. Not my proudest moment. Covered from head to toe in Cranberry's blood, her knees buckled. Remembering the horrifying death she'd witnessed and how her own magic had caused it, Tama vomited up everything in her stomach. She nearly collapsed then and there, but she managed, just barely, to hold herself together. She still had things to do. Swim! Was it really Swim Swim? The girl lying there appeared to be in early elementary school. Swim! Swim! She cried out desperately, but to no avail. She wondered if she could shake the body, then took it in her arms. The girl's eyelids twitched slightly. She was still alive.
Swim!
Her eyelids fluttered, then slowly opened.
Swim?
Yeah. The girl got up.
Oh, thank goodness! You're okay. I'm so surprised. You're just a kid.
She'd always assumed the leader was older. After Ruler's death, Swim Swim had taken the reins. She gave orders, but despite Tama's many screw-ups, she never yelled like Ruler had, never abandoned her. She'd let her stay. She seemed like a kind adult. The girl clung to Tama for support while she struggled to her feet. She pressed down on her side and grimaced, wobbled, regained her balance with help from Tama, and finally stood. By then, she was no longer a little child, but the transformed Swim Swim. Swim Swim summoned her weapon into her hands, then swung it to the side. Something burned in Tama's throat. She felt something spraying from her. The warmth drained from her body instantly. Her legs struggled to support her, and she collapsed. Her consciousness melded into darkness before she could understand what had happened. It had to be done. Ruler had said they must kill anyone who learned their true identity, so she had to kill Tama. She was a companion, and it was cute how her ears and tail drooped when she screwed up, but Ruler's orders were final.
Hey, new master! Can you hear me, Bloom?
A voice sounded from her magical phone.
There's a lot we need to discuss. Is now okay? You must have questions too, Poon. Like, what exactly is Magical Girl Raising Project? Or who exactly I am, Poon?
Swim Swim wiped away the tears streaming down her face with her wrist.
Hey, are you listening, Poon? We need to work together as one now, you know? If we can't communicate, there'll be nothing but trouble, Poon. You're not going to say you don't want to be a master, are you, Poon?
What's a master?
A very important magical girl, Poon.
Then I'll become one.
Thank you for accepting, Poon. So we'll be working together from now on.
No. She turned the phone off. Ruler stood at the top. Ruler wouldn't work together with someone else. Emergency announcement. 5.
Well, Fob has some important news, so no one better miss this, Poon. We'll start with those cut last week. Tama, Hardcore Alice, Meadow, the musician of the Forest Cranberry. Congratulations! You've reduced your numbers to less than 4, Poon. Further information will be distributed to each of you individually. See you! Meow.
We're so close. Chapter 9. Cosmo's flowers become the battlefield. The Magical Kingdom's Talent Discovery Department tended to hate office work. Scooper seems to hate it too. And the stronger the mage, the more obvious this was. For this reason, the digital fairy familiars that lived in supervisor magical phones and took care of desk work were prized far more than the orthodox familiars of old, like black cats and owls. About 80% of the department had such familiars. Fob was an older familiar, even in the talent discovery department. But despite his long tenure, he had no passion for his job. I'm sorry, the way they're describing this, I just imagine him like in a suit and tie and a little briefcase. It's so silly. He couldn't remember whether he had lost that spark somewhere along the way, or if he had just never had it. Most likely, he was defective. He had grown tired of the selection tests and bored with his masters, continuing on as a familiar purely out of habit until he met Cranberry. In Cranberry's first selection test, a summoned demon had gone berserk and massacred the master. master courage, you could say, I'm sorry, and other applicants, because Vav hadn't checked to prevent such accidents like he was supposed to. This exceptional situation blew away the same old selection test and excited Vav. But watching the 9-year-old girl defeat the demon by herself excited him even more. The look in her eyes, the way she spoke, and her unusually belligerent attitude said she was clearly off her rocker. But Fav's report to the higher-ups mentioned no problems at all. Surely she would be able to create a fascinating selection test. Though he had just lost his previous partner, Fav named her his master right away. As it turned out, Fav was correct. Cranberry ended up being the best supervisor and partner he could wish for. Oh, I'm so touched, Fav. Thank you so much. No other magical girl would actually participate in the test to slake a thirst. What is slake? I've never heard of that word. For blood, after all. Cranberry got to enjoy her death matches, and Fav got to enjoy the thrilling spectacle. The normal selection tests were no fun to watch at all. They looked for qualities that had nothing to do with magic, like courage, wit, and personality, and only one of the applicants was chosen to become a true magic user. Those who failed simply had their memories erased and returned to their normal lives. But Fav and Cranberry's tests were different. They bent the rules to end the lives of the rejected applicants, encouraged them to kill one another, and ensured that that only the strongest would end up victorious. Sometimes Cranberry even forgot herself and killed the strongest. Her bloodlust was glorious, but she did tend to go overboard. The magical kingdom firmly believed that all people were inherently good, which to Fav was completely stupid. He did everything in his power, messing with the winners' memories, sending fake reports, to keep the wool over their eyes, and so far they were none the wiser. Naturally, the winners were also stronger, so the superior results of their selection tests actually helped Fav's and Cranberry's reputations. Talented practitioners strengthened the magical kingdom, which meant Fav and Cranberry could call themselves proud practitioners compared to the masters who held orthodox selection tests and fostered incompetence. Fav was fond of Cranberry, but he wasn't sentimental enough to mourn now that she was dead. If he needed a new master, he would swap in a heartbeat. Oh, ouch. Fav, why? Swim's motivation was difficult to determine, and she even rejected Fav's help, so she was hardly a good master. She would need to be eliminated. Okay, since it's switching POV and right before the image, I think I will put the next image on the screen. La Pucelle had sworn to protect her. Sister Nana had tried to find a peaceful solution. And Hardcore Alice. That girl who had lost her key had been Hardcore Alice. While the end of the game was a relief, Snow White also wondered why only she had survived. She was a crybaby, a weakling, a coward, and above all, fearful, always shaking in her boots. Yet she was the only one to survive. The lone thought in her mind was, Am I alive? So when another surviving magical girl proposed a meeting, she agreed without hesitation. She thought of them all as friends, as people important to her. Yet she was more relieved to be alive than sad that they were dead. It made her want to kill herself. She wanted to ask the other survivor how she felt now that everything was over. Nothing she ate had any taste, and nothing she imagined scared her anymore. She was simply numb. The girl waiting at the steel tower by the beach was nothing like she had imagined. She seemed like neither a veteran hero nor a blood-crazed murderer. The aura around her was more lonely than anything, and a sadness darker than her black clothes hung over her. But there was a brilliant glow in her almond eyes. A strong will burned within. Good evening. Good evening. Ripple, that was the name of this other survivor. Swim. Huh? If you know anything about her, I need you to tell me. Why was she asking about Swim Swim? As if reading the question on her face, Ripple spoke. I have to kill her.
Huh? To avenge a friend.
But they announced that the game's over.
If you know anything about Swim Swim, I need you to tell me.
The end had already been announced. They didn't need to kill or compete anymore. Snow White desperately searched for a way to convince her of this. Ripple, on the other hand, saw Snow White's silence, sighed, and turned her back to her.
Well, bye.
Wait! Snow White had had enough. She didn't want to see or hear about anyone dying anymore. The scary competition's over! We don't have to knock each other out of the running now! Ripple looked back over her shoulder.
Let's just stop. I hated how we had to hurt others in order...
Sorry, wrong character. I thought it meant, like, let's just stop with all this game nonsense and just kill because we're wanting revenge. Okay. Let's just stop. I hated how we had to hurt others in order to survive. And now there's no reason to do any of that. If you kill someone now, you won't be acting as a magical girl. You'll be a murderer.
I don't care. I'll just be a murderer if I have to.
She didn't need to repeat herself. Her words and eyes communicated her iron will, and Snow White took a half step back.
But I did once want to become a magical girl. Like you, Snow White.
Ripple turned her back once again. Snow White realized she could not stop her. Nothing she could say would change her mind. Everyone associated with Swim Swim had died. Ruler, whom she supposedly followed, Cranberry, who'd gone to see her, even the Peaky Angels and Tama, who'd been a part of her team. Ripple would certainly die as well. She couldn't beat Swim Swim. Snow White had never made a choice. Had only let things happen as they did. But Ripple was making a decision. She knew it was the wrong path, that it would lead to her death, but it was her choice, and she would see it through. Ripple had said she was not a magical girl, but that was wrong. Ripple was a true magical girl. Snow White didn't want her to die.
Swim Swim's weaknesses are light and sound, Pum. She can pass through all matter, but not light or sound, Pum.
A voice echoed from both of their magical phones at the same time. The high-pitched synthetic voice continued confidently in stereo.
Well, if you aren't satisfied, Ripple, we could continue the game, Pum. It'll be part of the competition, not a grudge match. So who will you blame, Pum? Simple as that. Well, good luck surviving until the final two, Pum.
Snow White glared at the phone in horror. Fav's cheerful tone never successfully masked the hellish things he spoke of.
Fav, what are you?
Thank you. I'm grateful.
Ripple thanked him and leaped from the steel tower. Snow White reached out her hand, but only swiped at air, just inches from her red scarf.
Girls like her will do what it takes, even if you leave them alone. It's easier just to give them a push in the right direction, Boom.
Why? Why did you encourage her? Meow. I'm okay. We're just voice acting. We're not upset. We're just voice acting, okay? Cats are so funny.
Normally, Swim Swim would be my new master, Plum. She killed Tama, who killed Cranberry. So she's more qualified, Plum.
What are you talking... Wait, wrong voice. What are you talking about?
She's just no good, Plum. She's got too many fried circuits in important parts of her brain, so Fav can't partner with her. She has talent as a killer, but she's a failure as a master, Plum. So if Ripple is itching to kill her, then Fav doesn't mind helping her out.
How considerate, Fav. Oh. Meow. Snow White tore the magical phone from the makeshift leather utility belt at her waist, grabbed it with both hands, and raised it in the air. She glared at the holographic black and white mascot.
Why are you angry, Boom? Isn't this what you wished for, Boom? If Ripple and Swim Swim take each other out, you'll be the only one left alive and the absolute winner. You'll become Bob's new master and win an invitation to the magical kingdom, Boom.
She let go with her right hand and balled it into a fist. She raised it up, then slammed it down. Her enhanced strength was enough to snap it in half, and the screen darkened.
Oh dear, what a waste, Boom. There's no point doing that to cheer yourself up. Destroying your phone doesn't mean Bob goes anywhere.
The projected image faded. Hardcore Alice had said that as long as Snow White existed, the town would always have one magical girl. Even on death's bed, she had thought of Snow White. Her own life had been about to disappear, yet she was thinking of others. Snow White no longer considered herself a magical girl, but she'd rather die than disappoint Hardcore Alice. She knew what she had to do, and with that in mind, she dived from the top of the steel tower. I'm just peeking ahead to see it. We are pretty close. We're like 10 pages away. They could have met anywhere they wanted. All of the super territorial magical girls were gone, and the city was littered with empty locations at night. Swim Swim chose Kojimadai Dam only because it was near her home. Nothing more complicated than that. The meandering mountain path suddenly opened up to the dam. About 100 yards from the entrance was a hollowed-out circle, paved with stone and filled with wooden benches. People used them during the day, but at night it was another story. Rolling mountains lay to the east and beyond the dam to the west. This area was created so people could enjoy the scenery. Though it was near the town, the mountainous terrain got very dark at night. The cosmos flowers blooming... The POV switch, so I think I'll take the image down. The cosmos flowers blooming on one side were practically invisible. The air had been humid, warning of the rain to come. The downpour wasn't particularly heavy. Droplets dotted the concrete, with little spots of black that slowly connected and spread. The surface of the reservoir rippled. But no matter how strong the rain was, it never wet Swim Swim. It simply passed through her and splashed against the ground. Swim Swim was now a master. She didn't know exactly what that meant, though. Fav had given her a lot of documents filled with words she still didn't know how to read, so she'd asked him to write out how to pronounce them, and left it at that. She had become a leader of all magical girls, just like Ruler had wanted to be. But she'd lost the Peaky Angels and Tama in the process. Ruler would have been able to become a master with everyone still alive. Swim Swim looked up at the sky. The rain was about to get worse. When Fav had told her Ripple wanted to meet, Swim Swim had accepted easily. Ruler had always said that a leader was not a leader without followers. They didn't have to kill each other anymore, and she needed followers. Footsteps echoed through the rain droplets, rhythmic splashes of water. Whoever it was, she was at the entrance, about 100 yards away. She was like Shadow, the hedgehog. Sorry. She was like Shadow. Black clothes, black hair, black eyes. But Shadow has red eyes. But, okay. 50 yards. She seemed familiar. Swim Swim had seen her somewhere before. 20. She was wearing a coat. 10. The wind whipped at the coat. Something was written on the back. The kanji characters were too difficult to read. 5. She stopped. The light in her almond eyes was sharp enough to cut her when she met her gaze. Swim Swim remembered who she was. She flicked a pill into the air with her thumb, caught it in her mouth, and swallowed. She didn't intend to waste time. The moment Ripple attacked, she glimpsed Swim Swim's magic. Everything passed through her, like a blade slicing through the air. The first time they fought, she'd sunk into the building like it was made of water. She could pass through matter, so even if there was a time limit to her magic, Swim Swim could still escape easily. There was only one way for Ripple to counter her. Swim Swim produced her enormous weapon and slashed. Ripple attempted to dodge by spinning half a step to the right, but failed. Swim Swim's blade was faster and stronger than she'd expected. She was a different beast from when they fought atop the hotel. The left side of the ninja's face burned, and her vision turned red. Ripple clicked her tongue. Stripping off Top Speed's coat, she threw it over Swim Swim. The coat met no resistance and simply fell to the pavement. By the time she realized Swim Swim had sunk into the ground, she could feel a thirst for her blood behind her. She twisted around and sensed a rush of air coming at her. A blade. She glimpsed Swim Swim as something translucent to her left attempted to chop her in half. The weapon was almost invisible. There was no dodging it. Instinctively, she pulled back her arm. Something yanked at her skin, and pain soon followed. The wound was deep, but that had been her goal. She'd created her own opening. Ripple kicked at Swim Swim's head, but not to damage her. Covering the other girl's eyes with the sole of her foot, she reached into the 4-dimensional bag hanging from her hip, Calamity Mary's item. Swim Swim couldn't pass through everything. According to Fav, there were some things she was weak against, like light and sound. Ripple's only choice was to take the mascot's advice. With her magic, the weapons she threw always hit their mark. Even with a deep wound in one arm and a crushed eye, as long as she threw them, they'd land. She pulled the pin and gently tossed the stun grenade. It seemed to fly through the air in slow motion. Her ability made sure it hit the target and slid. It slid into her body. The stun grenade was a specialized hand grenade for situations where casualties were not an option. It was a non-lethal weapon to render targets helpless with the intense light and sound it emitted when detonating. The temporary loss of sight and hearing caused its victims to panic and freeze. This was one of Calamity Mary's weapons, and though she was dead, it was still boosted with her magic. Even with Swim Swim to cover the explosion, Ripple was so close that the impact nearly knocked her out. The sound of the rain was gone. The world spun and her feet felt unstable. There was a terrible ringing in her ears, and her vision was completely black. She almost fainted. But this was nothing compared to what Swim Swim was experiencing. Once she'd passed out, her magic would have no effect, and she'd lose her invincibility. She focused her screaming senses to find Swim Swim, and felt a presence. Though she couldn't find her with light or sound, instinct served just as well. She raised her sword and hurled it. It connected. She heard something collapse into a puddle and a violent, continuous spray. A large amount of liquid splashed against her. Blood, possibly. The rain washed away the warm mystery liquid. It was finished. She'd finished it. What would Top Speed say? She'd probably be mad. Ripple was glad she got to meet Snow White. She'd been the kind of magical girl who lived to protect others. The kind Ripple had wanted to be. If she got another chance, she wouldn't click her tongue. She'd be a proper hero. The energy from the blast made her stumble back a few steps. She tripped on the curb and fell into the bushes. The bleeding was heavier than she'd first thought. She needed to rest. The rain began falling harder, and the cold droplets pelted her body. Her consciousness dimmed. Out of the corner of her eye, she could see Snow White crying. As far as visions on your deathbed went, this was pathetic. Ripple tisked, then closed her eyes. She'd been too late. Snow White sank to her knees in the middle of a puddle. To one side was a girl who looked to be in early elementary school, skewered by a Japanese sword. It ran through her back, out of her chest, and into the pavement. The girl was, without question, dead. A cross between a polearm and a hatchet lay nearby, and further away was a magical phone. This device was double the size of Snow White's. On the other side, Ripple lay in a bed of flowers. Strands of skin and muscle barely held her right arm together, and the pool of blood flowing into the pavement from her body was as big as the one from the skewered girl. It gushed out like a red river, slowly thinning as the rain came down.
Congratulations!
Head bowed, Snow White ground her teeth until the voice made her look up. The oversized magical phone projected a holographic image into the air.
Swim Swim and Ripple are gone, leaving only you, Plum. Snow White, you are officially the winner, Plum. Boy, to win without ever dirtying your own hands? Should have expected as much from you, Plum.
Fav's tone was brighter than ever before.
Things would get a little inconvenient for Fav without a master, Plum.
I won't.
Hmm?
I won't become a master.
Why?
Snow White stood, letting the rain and tears flow down her face. Silently, she approached the image. I can hear you. You said if I don't become a master, you'll be in trouble.
Well, in a sense, yes, but...
We forgot the poem.
Well, in a sense, yes, Plum, but...
The sound of splitting pavement cut off Fav's speech. Snow White stomped on the magical phone, breaking the surface beneath it. She didn't stop, driving the device into the concrete. Wham! 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 The smashing sounded through the rain.
What are you doing?
I can hear your voice.
Huh?
You're saying you'll be in trouble if this master phone is destroyed.
Oh, that explains it.
Fav snorted.
Right, you can hear the voices of those in trouble. Seriously, you're wasting your time.
Snow White retrieved the device from the hole in the ground and slammed it against the asphalt. It bounced 30 feet into the air. Then, as it fell, she smashed it into the ground again. She threw it, kicked it, wailed on it, bashed it, ground it underfoot.
It's seriously no use, Plum. The master phone is built tough, Plum. It's not like the cheap knockoffs you all use. This is a super version people in the magical kingdom use every day. You're not nearly strong enough, Snow White.
Snow White panted with effort. Her target, however, was unharmed.
Personally, Fav would like to be on better terms with you, so go ahead and hit the phone all you like. Once you're done, we can talk, okay?
Snow White sank to her knees before the device. She beat it relentlessly, left fist, right fist, over and over and over and over. Her knuckles split and blood covered her fists. But she continued. Still she continued.
When will you learn that it's all pointless?
She didn't care. She just needed to destroy this thing, no matter what. She ripped up a piece of pavement and bashed on it. She hurled a bench at it. Not even a piece of the stone around the flower bed had any effect. Did she have any help? Did she have anything that would help? A flower hair piece, a broken magical phone, an armband? Nothing. She dug through her pockets and brushed against something soft. It was a cat named Scooper. Yeah! Pulling it out, she saw that it was the rabbit's foot.
Magical girls have a bad habit of thinking things, they can Magical girls have a bad habit of thinking they can solve anything and everything, Plum. If La Pucelle and Hardcore Alice had realized that, they wouldn't have died like dogs. Even Top Speed, after all she did to survive, just died like a fool.
Shut up. Neither Snow White nor Fav had spoken. Oh, that's Ripple. We stand Scooper in the sub chat. Yeah. Meow. Did you hear that? Scooper's he's sticking his tongue out. It's so cute.
Shut up.
Neither Snow White nor Fav had spoken. A shadow fell at Snow White's feet. She looked up to see a wounded girl, ready to collapse at any moment, leaning on a staff of some kind.
Ripple, you're alive, Plum?
Don't laugh at top speed. Rip. Are you laughing at top speed, Scooper? I hope you're not. Ripple shakily erased her support. Not a staff, but the weapon that had been lying on the ground earlier. The polearm hatchet combo. The projected image flickered. Fov flapped his wing faster, scattering more scales than before. Snow White could hear his innermost thoughts.
The weapon Swim was using from the magical kingdom. That could be bad. Really bad. Gotta talk Ripple out of this somehow. Hold on, Ripple, you're mistaken, Poem. Fov isn't making fun of top speed, Poem. Fov respects all magical girls, Poem. Maybe it seemed like Fov was picking on you, but it was all under Cranberry's orders, Poem. She threatened Fov into helping her and made Fov do all the dirty work, Poem. It was all her orders. Fov got all these abilities to stop rampaging magical girls, but she used them to break the rules. Don't listen to him!
Snow White yelled as Ripple stepped back and swung. We're at the epilogue. I'm so sorry that we're running a bit late, by the way. We're at the epilogue. Students on the way home from school packed into the fast food joint. Among the crowd, 2 high school girls sat across from each other. One rested her chin on her hands, apparently bored, while the other swiped through her smartphone with practiced hands. It's hard to get her 2 friends straight. Not late, I'm early. I love the Lucifer emo. I want to say emoji. Meow. It's tomorrow, isn't it? You mean when Koyuki comes back? Yeah. According to her emails, it's tomorrow. It's been 2 weeks since she left that letter and disappeared. Back in middle school, I never expected her to run away from home. She didn't seem like the type. Oh, hang on. We got the voices we were doing reversed. It's tomorrow, isn't it? You mean when Koyuki comes back? Yeah. According to her emails, it's tomorrow. It's been 2 weeks since she left that letter and disappeared. Back in middle school, I never expected her to run away from home. She didn't seem like the type. Yeah, I totally agree, Yo-chan. And she got worse when we started high school. Well, not really, but she got kind of crazy. Her parents were so worried. Like they were just glad she came home. Oh, what are you doing?
Reading up on magical girl sightings.
Sue me. Are you still going on about that?
Look, I know you don't see them as much anymore, but they're still here. Koyuki loved them too, remember? So I was going to get all the sightings for when she comes back.
Don't give me that. But what was it? Magical Girl Raising Project? That game had to shut down because of some major bug. It was all over the news when their stock plummeted. Magical girls are like done. They're not done, stupid. There's still sightings, see? Right here, this one-eyed, one-armed girl in black saved someone. She looks more like the Grim Reaper. The Grim Weeper. She looks more like the Grim Reaper. And there was that thing in the Middle East. Oh yeah, everyone had just given up on stopping all that terrible stuff going on because China and Russia wouldn't let other countries interfere. And then the revolutionaries caught the president and his officials and overthrew the government. They say the person who caught the officials and brought the revolutionaries was just one girl on her own. Like the winds, the girl in the white appeared, or so they say. It had to be a magical girl. Or a tall tale or an urban legend. What she did was basically terrorism. That's beside the point. Magical girls are not done. Not in the least. I bet Koyuki will say the same thing when she gets back. The sky was so blue, heaven so close. The sun seemed to be shining right next to her, and the clouds streamed boldly toward the horizon. Miles above the earth, there was nothing but clouds, sky, and sun. Her fantastic journeys through the sky, relaxing against the tail of a jumbo jet, had begun after she had applied to become a master. The battering of the wind, the freezing temperature, the roaring engines, none of it bothered her. Free rides? No, I guess free flights, since I'm on an airplane. She corrected herself internally. As she could not fly, Snow White always used this method to travel internationally. Normally, magical girls stuck to helping people in their small, town-sized territories and avoided straying too far from that. The magical kingdom would probably frown on interfering in international affairs according to her own morals. After learning how out of control Fob and Cranberry's selection tests had been, the magical kingdom had immediately dispatched special envoys to Earth. They had apologized profusely to Snow White and Ripple, made them official magical girls, and granted them special rights as honorary citizens of the magical kingdom. Snow White wasn't sure whether she was grateful for that or not. Whatever the case, the magical kingdom was having a little trouble keeping a handle on their selfish do-gooders who got angry at what they saw in the newspaper and set off for foreign lands. She turned the master phone on, opened the mailbox, and saw she had an email from her director in the magical kingdom. Magical girls are more than capable of becoming a... Wait. Oh, I thought it's in italics, and that usually means thoughts. So I thought this was Snow White's thoughts, but it's the email. Magical girls are more than capable of becoming assassins and terrorists, which is why we of the Magical Girl Division require self-control. Your dedication to upholding morality should allow you to suppress personal impulses. In fact, she stopped reading there and deleted the email. Snow White knew all too well that small kindnesses would change nothing. Just watching from the sidelines would never bring about progress. Leaving it to others would never solve anything. She'd learned all this the hard way, which was exactly why she was trying to change. She wanted to change. The magical girls she had known would have done the same. Up until their deaths, and even at death's door, they remained true to themselves. Another email popped up. Memory alteration has been detected on testing grounds B7098 and B7243. Accidents appear to have caused deaths in both cases. Furthermore, they are caused by the same master. Said master will be holding a selection test soon on testing ground B7511. Unlike Snow White, who was a lone wolf, Ripple knew many people in various departments. They were more like fans than friends, though. How exactly that had come to be, she didn't know. But Ripple was cute and cool, so it was probably inevitable, Snow White thought to herself. Don't regret not acting next time. Act before you regret it, she whispered to no one in particular. And here's a little message from the author. I almost said alter. Oh wait, did we not flip this one? Yeah. Hang on, let me flip it. Afterward. My name is Asari Endo, and I love magical girls so much that if they really existed, I'd be over the moon. To change the subject a bit, my friend Ikun once told me, of all things, I love tentacles, interacting with girls in various ways. The next day, everyone called him Tentacles. You may be confused, but in starting this afterward by stating I love magical girls, I am saying I am prepared to be called a magical girl. Now, back on subject. To help me write this, I pulled out some of my old works and read the afterwards, which were filled with things like, if possible, I hope we meet again soon. Adding on, if possible, to protect myself in case I hope we meet again soon. Part doesn't come true was quite cowardly, I think. There probably aren't many out there, but I hope any young boys reading this afterward never become like me when they grow up. In my previous afterwards, I wrote about how my editor, Esmera-san, warned me not to write anything that could come off as socially objectionable, but this time I received no such warning. Perhaps he thought there was no need to try to cover up anything in the afterword when the novel itself was rather socially objectionable. After all, there's no denying the antisocial natures of our pre-writing process discussions in family restaurants about how best to kill off innocent girls, and our long discussions over the phone consisting of, no, this won't work, that won't work either, this seems interesting, let's go with that. Thus, this will be an afterword with a focus on proper societal behavior. I'm sorry, that was a lie. There's not much of that here at all. Writing this was less of a bumpy ride and more of a roller coaster. First, I screwed up with the progression of the plot, and once I had finished my first draft, I couldn't settle on either the middle or the ending. Slowly, after countless suggestions to change this, nix that, add this, etc., the polish was done. We fought with words and fists, collapsed, spread eagle by the riverbed illuminated by the setting sun, then got up and said, "You're not so bad." Same to you, and laughed together. I was surprised to find this was what authors and editors must go through together, and so in this fashion the novel changed shape many times until we finally settled on its current form. But even now I don't feel it's finished. I'm very sorry, but I'm not satisfied. To give you an example of how unsatisfied I am, I once dreamed about Calamity Mary. She beat me, kicked me, then finally shot me dead. It was a nightmare, just terrible. To the editors who guided me to the end, and especially my editor, Esmera-san, my heartfelt gratitude. Thank you very much. To Marui no Sensei, who drew the illustrations. I am sorry for the direct trouble my late manuscript caused, and will be keeping the beautiful illustrations of magical girls as a treasure to pass on to my descendants. I especially liked Nemarine. Thank you very much. Lastly, to my readers, thank you very much for buying this volume. Until next time. If possible, I hope we meet again soon. No, seriously. And then on our illustration here it says, "Nice to meet you. I'm Marui no. I got to draw so many magical girls. I'm truly blessed. These girls trying to survive in such a dark world were so cool. I'm happy I got to help bring this story to life. So as I pray to meet them again, somewhere. Thank you very much. Marui no." It has been an absolute pleasure reading through book 1 of Magical Girl Raising Project. I think I'm going to read Pickles for Nickels. And I will start Magical Girl Raising Project book 2 in 3 weeks. Oh, I gotta stretch. We honestly kept going back and forth thinking during this stream tonight if we want to try to break it up so that we do like 3 streams per book. Because time-wise, it seems doable to do half a book. I mean, I read half of the book in less than 4 hours, but just energy-wise, it might be more wise to split a book in 3 parts. So I think from now on we'll be doing that. But yes, I'm looking forward to starting book 2. I feel, for the most part, with our little casting decisions with all our headmates, we mostly stuck to what we set out, but we could, I don't know, we might end up changing things around more in future books because as I've said before, this book 1, has an anime, so it's like easier to know what the characters might sound like. So we might end up thinking, if that makes sense, changing our voice decisions, especially when we get into like books we haven't read. We've read 2 and 3 already, but after that everything will be blind. And that will be fun. Okay. I'll just go over our little schedule really quick. Tomorrow night, Snuggle is going to be coloring. We have mainly PNG tubers to color. We have a couple of new OCs of our new headmate to color. We have emotes to color. We might just have some general OC fan art as well. We mainly just want to do the PNG tubers. Yeah, that would be a lot of fun. We have the sketches for these PNG tubers. We really like them. They're really cute. I'm excited. And then Tuesday, Magma will be playing Five Nights at Freddy's 1 and 2. Wednesday, Q will do a Brandy and Mr. Whiskers watch party. We'll be playing Skullgirls. We'll probably just be doing the first 5 episodes of Brandy and Mr. Whiskers. We recently decided to, instead of having watch parties more spread out, do them more often but shorter. I think that's a wise decision, so yes. And then Friday, Chalky will be doing Cookie Run, Bust a Groove, and this isn't on our schedule, but she will probably also be playing some Stumble Guys because the new season that just came out. So we definitely want, just like we did with the other season, if you're paying money for that, you might as well make use of it and, you know, play enough that you get all those upgrades? What do you call those leveling up things where you get rewards? Play through the season to make your money worth your time. Plus, it's fun. Okay. And now... Oh yes, I forgot. I should also say that just in a few minutes we'll be joining Fukuma for the Sonic X watch party. And Magma will be co-hosting that. It'll be a lot of fun. And also, in our... Oh, I typed 4, and that makes me do this face. In our coming weeks at the watch party as well, we will be having alters who haven't even debuted yet. And that's part of... That's, 2/3 of the PNG tuber models we're making are for them. So that will be fun. Oh yeah, I forgot to say my next stream, I should say, will be next Sunday. I'll be playing Smile for Me again. I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully I won't have to cheat too much. But we'll see. Okay. I'm rating for real now. I hope you don't have nightmares about Calamity Mary like the author did. I hope you have nightmares about Cranberry instead. Bye-bye.